what is it, March 28th to order. 25th, yeah. Sorry, my mistake, March 25th. Well, maybe we should meet continuously between now and the election just to keep everybody happy. Okay.
Mr. Teshi.
Here.
Mr. Trainee.
Folks, please hold it down. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Coffey.
Here.
Ms. Osiander. Ms. Johnston. Mr. Birch.
Here.
Mr. Bauer.
Here.
Dr. Selcraig. Here. Mr. Klayman.
Mr. Klayman is here. He's out having a discussion right now, Madam Clerk, but he is here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Do dialogue.
Yes.
We have no minutes. I've been told by Mr. Abbott that there will be no mayor's report. He is engaged with his young son doing something very important, and we think that's great. The Assembly Chair's report is brief, and it's as follows. Ms. Osiander and I have prepared and signed and will be sent by the clerk's office a letter to the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation with a request, let the record reflect Mr. Klayman's in the room, which reflect a request for them to do what they did many years ago, 10-plus years ago, which is an analysis of the need for industrial land in Anchorage. This arises out of the economic impact analysis we received from our consultants in the Title 21 rewrite, which indicated there could be substantial economic impacts in the order of magnitude of 20% against valuations on industrial land, depending on how we finally act. It's imperative that we know the need as best we can for industrial land before we make these changes or rezone or reclassify land. That letter will go out tomorrow, and copies will be available for anyone who cares.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Selcraig.
On that point, I've been in the process of drafting a ordinance that would do an industrial land need assessment as well as develop some strategies for acquiring needed or securing needed land or needed lands for industrial use. There's a whole variety of ways to approach that, and so I'll be sharing that with you.
Good. Well, the reason we went to, frankly, the reason we went to AEDC was because of the fact that they had done it before, so, and they spent their money rather than ours. Mr. Trainee.
This is designed actually to do that. So actually, I'll work with you on that. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you for that information. Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman, can we have them break it down by I-1 and I-2?
Certainly. I'll talk to Mr. Pop about that directly. You bet. There's very much a difference in the valuation
yes, there is.
and the impacts. Thank you. I have no one else on. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Teshi.
Can I also suggest that, perhaps in your letter to the Anchorage Economic Development Authority, that you ask them to address the need for additional industrial zone land in light of the approved Anchorage Economic Development Plan. Several years ago, the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce, approved a comprehensive plan for economic development in Anchorage. And you might want to consider asking them for an update on that plan and specifically how that plan is addressing the issues of industrial land for economic development.
Okay.
So I just add that as something that you may want to consider putting in your letter.
Thank you. Just quickly in response, this was sort of the opening gambit. As I think many of you are aware, I'm one of the representatives to AEDC from our body, and if they're receptive in any regard, then we're going to start a process, and I think we'll take a lot of input, such as the Chamber and the prior studies, and I thank you for that information, because we'll do that. Ms. Osiander?
This all came about when we were talking with the consultant about the economic impact analysis study that was recently done for Title 21. The biggest question seemed to be the impact on industrial properties, which will now see, at least potentially, significantly reduced potential uses. Most of the potential negative economic impact is centered around that. We did talk about the study that had been done some years ago, Mr. Teshi, and in that discussion where we were reviewing what had happened in the past, that's why we thought we'll go to them again and reference that it either be updated or they do another one.
Mr. Teshi, anything further?
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Birch?
I just wanted to note this past week we had a terrible amount of damage was done to one of our monuments here in town that recognizes the contributions and support of our veterans into the community. And I think given the high level of engagement we have with our military bases here, I would like to thank. I know we had the folks from the base last week from Elmendorf that were recognized for the #1 hospital in the country. I would like the veterans on the Assembly to stand and give them some recognition for this. Do we have any veterans on the Assembly?
Yep.
I don't know. Two. Great. Well, I just want to say thank you both. And I just, like I say, I think it's a real tragedy when we have the kind of damage it was that our monument sustained, and that I look forward to that getting cleaned up soon. Thank you.
Yeah, don't we all? I can't imagine people doing that. Mr. Trainey?
Mr. Chairman, I got a call that night from a Bob Kondopoulos. He owns Saltwater Safari down in Seward. He and his friends are willing to give $5,000 reward. So they've already got a hold of the people that are doing this to see if they can use that money to spur on finding who committed that atrocity in this town. And I wonder if the administration has any plans to put a video camera there, because I understand this is the first time that kind of nonsense has happened.
No, Mr. Abbott, on video cameras or other protection for our Veterans Monument?
It is one of the sites that's being considered for a variety of park security measures, including potentially video surveillance.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm just sorry we're to that point in our society we have to.
Yes, I've got Mr. Birch, then Mr. Teshi. Go ahead, Mr. Birch. Done? Fine. Mr. Teshi?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I certainly agree with the members of the Assembly that want to increase police surveillance of that monument to make sure that those who desecrated this monument to Alaska's heroes are brought to justice and very swiftly and very harshly. But in addition to that, I want to make sure that this Assembly is on record as supporting every effort possible, and every effort I mean humanely possible, to make sure that the veterans of this war in Iraq are treated with all due respect and the best medical care that this country has to provide. So I only remind the Assembly that in connection with making sure that we assure ourselves that APD is doing everything we can, everything it can to test perpetrators of this deplorable incident, that we also go on record as saying the best monument that we can have to the heroes of the Persian Gulf, the best monument that we can ever make to the people who are veterans of our foreign wars, including the war in Iraq, is medical care and rehabilitation to these individuals who are hurt, injured, or wounded in this war. So I just want to remind the Assembly, let's keep our eye on the ball and make sure that these veterans are taken care of when they come back. And I reflect with fondness on the Assembly's comments last week about the fifth wing at the Air Force. I think that's totally appropriate. But I would encourage us to think in those terms, as well as simply, bringing the people that brought this monument to a state of disrepair and a state of disgrace to justice.
Ms. Selkirk.
I think we all received information from Mr. Savage regarding some recommendations, and I think that they're certainly worth looking at. And one of them was to require that, assuming we catch whoever did this, that they part of their sentence be that they have to sit and understand the impact of war on veterans and education to them to sensitize them to the trauma, as well as an increased sentence. So I'll be looking at that, and I suppose others here will too. And I share Mr. Birch's concern and kind of disgust with this, and that I think that this time in our lives when young men and women and old men and women are actually at war defending us, we have to do everything we can to express our respect for them. So thank you for bringing this up, Mr. Birch.
All right. Continuing with the chairman's report. Part of the economic impact analysis was focused on about 5 different zonings. It did not include R1 and R1A and R2 and R2A zonings. Where I'm working with members, and Ms. Osiander is working with members of the Home Builders Association and the Real Estate Task Force to get that done. It's primarily design standards versus dimensional standards, which takes some attention, but they've asked for, and we agree that this is something that ought to be done. So much like the letter to AEDC, we'll be talking with the Home Builders Association, the Real Estate Task Force. Finally, on the recycling proposals which are before us, which we have on the table items. After Friday's work session, I asked Ms. Osiander, Mr. Clayman, and Ms. Johnston to please to join in a committee on that. What I wanted to do was get someone from Eagle River, someone from South Anchorage, which include Girdwood, and someone from the service area of solid waste services to look at this and make sure that we are basically getting the type of program and the type of recycling program that will be beneficial, maximally beneficial and efficient as possible in terms of costs for tipping fees, for pickup fees, and so on and so forth. It's something very important and very new to us, so it's important that we do this. I would also urge that committee to have discussions with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska staff to determine what is possible and not possible with regard to rates by those entities that are subject to regulation, which Solid Waste Services is not. So those are the 3 things I have on tonight, and I've been asked, and I think we have public hearings will be scheduled for the 3 items that are being laid on the table with regard to recycling on the 29th of April. So that's the end of that. Now, committee reports. Mr. Clayman, Public Safety.
Actually, before I get to Public Safety, have those laid on the table items about recycling been distributed yet, or are they coming?
Mr. Abbott is having them furiously copied, correct?
So that's fine. I just
Furiously.
I was at a loss, and now I realize I'm not at a loss. Public Safety, we met last week. We heard from the Police Department about their new Community Action Police Team, which they often refer to as the CAP team. That's a really impressive effort that the Police Department has started to be focused in communities where they're having particular problems and trying to be a bit more, I guess, aggressive in terms of meeting people and talking with them in the street, trying to make parking lots safe, find areas where they think crime is starting and kind of stop it before it begins. And that effort has been successful initially, and they're working for it in terms of collecting statistics to be able to show us how that's working. Sergeant Denny Allen is very involved with that, as well as several other officers. And there's a hope that if the research and studies show that it is effective, that they'll actually try to bring it to other parts of the city as well. So it was a very good presentation and good work the police department is doing.
I have a request of the Public Safety Committee in that regard. We got email from Mr. Harrington, who owns property VF Grace and on 13th and Gamble. And as I understand correctly, this program has been focused predominantly, or at least extensively, in Fairview. And I've been meeting with Darrell Hess and the others on the Fairview Community Council because of the public inebriate, drug dealing, prostitution issues, and there was a meeting on Saturday in that regard. At some point in time, there's legislative action pending with the Senate bill, I think it's 100, and then there's going to be some action that may be here, and certainly budget items, because we spend over $4 million taking people back and forth from the detox that we pick up on the street. So it's a substantial financial investment. If in the course of your work, Mr. Clayman, you could include sort of how can we help as a body in that effort to deal with public inebriates and the other things. That would be, I think it would be very helpful that sort of engages us formally in this effort that the Fairview folks are trying to bring together with Senator Ellis's help and so on. So I leave that to you.
And
yes,
just on that, the part of the CAP effort, and it is in Fairview, and part of the effort is to address some of that, because part of what they would find is, you'll say, I get a congregation of 5, 6, 8 people, they start hanging out on a street corner, drinking, carrying on, and then 30 minutes later some sort of a crime is taking place, and what happens is they go and start talking with the folks, and the folks no longer really want to stay on the corner and congregate because there's a police officer around, and that causes people to disperse. They don't start engaging in criminal activity, and it also probably has a bit of a deterrent effect in terms of even the drinking in public. So I think it's already having some beneficial impact.
Well,
but I will also look at these other issues, and I appreciate the report.
Yeah, I'm not so certain. I drove by there the 13th and Gamble on Saturday, and then I thought, well, I'll just cruise up and down the streets, and there was plenty of it still going on. And then I went there today because I had to drop off something at the ACE's office, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm coming down C Street. I'll go in 13th rather than wait to 15th, and there it is again. And so I know we're making a dent, but it doesn't seem that we're, if a policeman's around, it helps. If when the policeman leaves, then there they are again. So to the extent that you can bring us anything, that would be helpful. Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I think we have an ordinance that says that folks can't give money to folks that are on the corners giving, asking money, and it appears that the same folks here that are drinking in the streets are the folks who are collecting the dollars so they can continue their habit. And what I've seen on Lake Otis and Tudor, the same individual many days doing the same thing, just standing there right in the median, and I understand being in the median is illegal according to the ordinance. They're supposed to be on the sidewalks on the street. I even had a chance to take photographs of this guy at Lake Otis and Tudor just to see, and he's smiling away in the median collecting dollars. Now I know there's a lot of activity of police cars going back and forth through Lake Otis and Tudor because it is the most busiest intersection, so I've been told, why this individual is still there. And I would like to see some figures where maybe where we have some statistics where police or somebody has cited folks for giving money, because I understand we can't stop folks from being on the corners. We can stop them in the medians because that's illegal. But what about the statistics for a law that we passed that how many people have been cited for giving money to these folks? And I think that's what the Public Safety Committee, I would, ask if they can research that as they check into the drinking on the streets and homelessness and stuff like that.
Thank you. Mr. Training.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a son that drives for UPS, and he says if you go to the corner of Diamond and the old Seward Highway, the people that beg money there and come out to the cars to get the money, it's interesting. They have a leg cast that they use, and depending upon who's there, the leg cast seems to rotate from left to the right leg. My son drives all day through that intersection. It's really interesting. He says one time it's on the left leg, the other time another person has it on the right leg. So there is a problem with those people asking for money because they make hundreds of dollars a day out there, and they're preying on the people's good nature. So, Ms. Selkirk.
Just want to mention that the inebriate problem kind of runs all the way down Tudor as well, and that there's just last night I was grabbing something at the Taco Bell, and there was an inebriate, that's the truth, and there was an inebriate kind of wandering around Taco Bell, and then I saw him wander out into the street. Not only is it a problem in terms of asking for money, we've had some casualties, so I appreciate all the efforts in place, and I think kind of a comprehensive approach to it is a really wise one, and I'm hoping that we can make some progress in the next year on this.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Mr. Birch, Legislative Committee.
Nothing to report, but we will be traveling to Juneau before the end of the legislature.
And we are, you, Mr. Sullivan, and
I believe
the committee?
so, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bauer, Audit?
No report, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, Ethics.
The Ethics Committee met this afternoon just before this meeting to discuss AO 2008-43 and had a good discussion No recommendation from the committee at this time. We're still waiting on opinion from the legal department, but had a very good discussion about campaign contributions and possibly further restrictions on those kind of contributions when people have business in front of the city. So I'll keep you informed.
Thank you. I'm just looking at my list. We haven't heard anything about AMAT lately. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Birch, anything going on at AMAT?
AMATS meets this Thursday, and next meeting I won't be here, but Mr. Birch will give you an update.
Okay, good enough. Mr. Starr, Budget and Finance.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a committee meeting yesterday, and we talked several items, and three of them were primary. We reviewed the upcoming first quarter budget review schedule. That was primarily to make sure we all stay focused that there's more work to be done on the budget review. April 29th is when we actually see those first quarter adjustments. Prior to that, April 11th and April 25th are scheduled assembly work sessions, and we've stuck a committee meeting in on April 23rd. It's calendared already, and that's the intention to help some of the new members and disseminate ongoing information as well as make a committee recommendation and kind of package the amendments that may occur. So April 23rd will be that. It's a Wednesday. And then we'll see how the approval on the 29th goes. We had that topic as well as we reviewed with a really nice presentation from the administration on the quarterly summary. If you remember, the resolution we passed after the year-end review suggested several aspects of better financial reporting based on quarters. And we've agreed on the formats and the presentation timeframes for the quarterly reports, and that's a nice piece of policy, I think, that we can all sort of be proud of, that we'll sort of see a work in progress every quarter, 30 days after the end of the quarter, that kind of gives us a financial statement of where the city's at. And kudos to the administration, specifically Sharon Weddleton there and Wanda Phillips with that. They really came through with the clear, readable reports. Will be presented in an AIM format to us 30 days after the quarter ending. The last topic we talked about was proceeding. We had a presentation from our formed ad hoc committee that's reviewing managed competition. We had an at-length conversation, reviewed a work-in-progress document on how to package the options and the concept of managed competition as it applies to city entities, all non-critical entities. But we're going to proceed with a pilot program, a review of a specific entity yet to be decided, that will sort of flesh out the concept in real terms with real budgets and real people. And we're going to select a representative group from the city, and hopefully it's an overlapping group that has also redundant services provided from ASD and the city, and sort of move forward with a pilot program to review the concept of managed competition and how that could apply. So we're moving forward in that.
Thank you. Ms. Selfridge?
Is that, do you have a summary, or do you have a document that we could look at, or what, in terms of the kind of framework for the managed competition that's available?
Yeah, there was a document handed out yesterday, which is, again, just sort of a draft comment. Mr. Abbott weighed in with quite a few administrative comments and such as that. So it is sort of a work in progress. I have copies for you on that, but we've already clearly decided that it's got some complicated aspects to it, and they'll continue to review it. The entire committee meeting was recorded, so you can sort of summarize that if you'd like to hear that.
Could you just make the document available to us, just so that we can kind of keep up?
Sure, it changes, basically weekly. But
I understand it's a draft. I just would like to kind of have a sense of where it's going.
I'll send it to you electronically, or you
That'd be great.
Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you get it to the clerk and let her distribute it across the board? Then we all have the same information.
Yep, just understand it's changing as we speak.
Yeah.
I understand. Everybody's draft. Okay, Mr. Teshi?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the chair of the Assembly Budget and Finance Committee had anything to report by way of a recommendation on the school district budget. I know that this is set on for another item on the agenda, but is there going to be a specific recommendation on the school district budget, which we will take up later on the agenda?
Mr. Teshi, that will come from Ms. Johnston, who's going to report next, if there is anything. That's
very much.
Thank you. Okay, which brings us to Ms. Johnston and the school district. Go ahead.
Yes, we had a very in-depth meeting with the school board on Friday, and we reviewed the commission's report. We reviewed the study that Cheryl Fresca did as far as the school district budget. And at this point, I think that that we're feeling pretty comfortable with the school district budget. We have also committed to working for the school district committee next year as far as looking what kind of pilot program that the school district and the municipality might do with either managed competition or joint services, and that will be the next task for the school district committee. And that's my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We've got, those of you who were there saw the questions and answers about the school district financial plan, the document in several pages long answering those questions. The other document where the documents were provided by the school district, and they talked about, I'm sorry, I'll get the heading here, public school funding formula, and there's a whole raft of things that have been handed out to us. So I hope people have had an opportunity to look at that. It was a very informative meeting from my point of view. Okay, that's that. Mr. Sullivan, anything on elections? We're going to have one here. Is anything happening?
Really, the only outstanding issue is the eligibility of my colleague to my right, and it's my understanding on the 27th at 9:30 in the morning, the Supreme Court will take up that issue. So we'll have more information. It doesn't affect the Elections Committee per se, but that's some election news.
All right, thank you. On Title 21, Ms. Osiander.
Thank you. I want to express my appreciation to the Assembly members who attended the meeting with the consultant on the economic analysis of the proposed Title 21 changes. I also want to thank the folks who, even if they weren't able to attend that, did manage to wade through the document. As we stated earlier, the main information that we gleaned from that is one I think we already inferred already. The principal concern, or one of the principal concerns, is going to be adverse economic impacts for current owners of industrial property. The study looked only at business and industrial zones. It excluded residential because the proposed language for Title 21 does not have as wide an impact for those properties. The basic summary of the finding was that costs for development should actually decline for many of those properties because of the reduction in parking requirements. It also, though, recognized there would be some increased land use requirements for the new regulations specific as to landscaping, additional buffering, additional snow storage, and space, open space requirements. They also talked about some additional costs that would come from, say, the new lighting and design standards. But overall, the analysis concluded that the reduction in parking would cause a significant enough reduction to offset those and some. The planning staff worked with a consultant to create a template or a model so that costs for development could be fed into the model, and then afterwards there'd be a way to really figure out the impact for a specific piece of property. They're continuing to refine that, and at the meeting with a group of real estate and business development folks, there was a lot of desire to put additional properties through the model. The model really only looked at 3 properties, and I think it's going to be beneficial to everybody once more properties can be run through that. There was also some discussion about adding some of the residential analysis into the framework, and we've got a commitment from 2 firms that deal with residential property, that they're going to give us some input on design cost impact so that we'll be able to get some more data in that regard. So it was a major effort that's much appreciated, and it's going to be ongoing as we can feed more and more info into that still developing model. So thank you to the planning staff and the consultant for that. Additionally, tonight I'm going to be introducing for the committee 3 separate chapters that are basically a breakdown of the Chapter 4, 5, and 6 that has already been introduced and for a public hearing. The goal there, because it's such a big amount of information, is that we'd have an opportunity to deal with it in a little smaller bite by having the public hearing and then the vote on just Chapter 4, and then Chapter 5, and then Chapter 6, rather than doing them all concurrently. The committee will begin again on Chapter 5. We will be meeting Thursday morning from 9:30 to 11:30 at the Planning Department off Elmore. It's a public meeting. You're welcome to join us if you have concerns and questions. Specifically now, what we're looking at, if you want to come to that meeting, is we're looking at the tables that show each zoning district and what the allowed uses in that district are. So you can, we're trying to do kind of a judgment call. What's appropriate kind of business in this kind of use? What's an appropriate kind of use in that district? And it's taken us some time, but hopefully we'll be able to give you good thoughts and advice when it comes to you in whole. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry. Mr. Starr.
Yeah, for the members of the Title 21 Committee, as you know, we have the chapter that's being written, the separate chapter, if you reference it, out in Chugiak Eagle River for that. And I was hoping to perhaps get some feedback, either on the record or later, that you could give us an update as to how they're proceeding with that. I know they've enjoined Land Design North for some of that, and so perhaps encouraging some dialogue and get maybe a sort of a update to the rest of the body and what we can expect for that. It's been some of the talk, especially as I've been in and around the community councils, they're also answering that, and I'd like something formal to maybe tell them as the process of where we're at. I've somewhat stayed in tune with it, but be helpful to have an update if you can put that on your agenda.
Well, Ms. Osiander?
Well, at this point, I've just had some informal conversations with members of the consortium that are working on that. Basically now they have, as you say, consulted with Land Design North. Land Design North has gone out to various individuals and groups throughout the community asking for identification of issues that are of particular concern to Chugiak Eagle River residents. I am yet unsure when they're anticipating being done. I know that our local community councils are now reviewing and going over land concerns in order to give a document to Land Design North so they can incorporate those. It is of some concern, particularly as we go through these chapters. I keep bringing up, well, here's something that might be specific for Chugiak Eagle River, and I've been trying to tab those, but it's a difficult process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on any committee issues? Okay. We're now moving into addendum to the agenda.
Move to incorporate.
Thank you. I'll read the items in the addendum. There are 9D, consent agenda, new business, 9D6, Assembly Memorandum AM 2003, Assembly Memorandum AM 203-2008, proprietary service contract with Grow Eggers LLC, Board of Adjustment Appeals, not to exceed $10,000. This was brought forward by myself. 9D7, Assembly Memorandum AM 2004. I did it again. 204-2008, Amendment Number 1, Reimbursable Services Agreement with the Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for Tudor Road and Lake Otis Parkway intersection improvements in the amount of $150,762.42. It comes from Project Management and Engineering Department. 9D8, Assembly Memorandum AM 206-2008, proprietary professional services contract with Utility Resources Incorporated for the Municipality of Anchorage, ML&P, in the amount of $50,000 from purchasing. 9D9, Assembly Memorandum AM 207-2008, tax-exempt master lease financing of capital improvements for the Information Technology Department of the Municipality of Anchorage, comes from the Finance Department. 9D10, Assembly Memorandum AM 208-2008, proprietary purchase of semantic email archiving and reporting software and implementation services with Structured Solutions Incorporated for the Municipality of Anchorage Information Technology Department. in the amount of $285,907.60 comes from purchasing. 2 new ordinances, 9F10, resolutions and ordinances. Resolution number AR 2008-61, a resolution Anchorage Assembly appropriating $75 million from the proceeds of the sale of subordinate lien port revenues notes, commercial paper, to the Port of Anchorage Capital Improvement Fund 571 and revising the approved 2008 Port of Anchorage Capital Improvement Budget for expenditure of local matching funds for the port intermodal expansion process. Public hearing is set for the 15th of April, 2008. It's accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 205-2008. Ordinance 9F11, or AO 2008-47, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 3.30.127 regarding service pay recognition, and Sections 3.3181, 3.3182, 3.30.184, and 3.3186 regarding productivity and employee incentive programs. This is brought to us by the Employee Relations Department. Public hearing is set for 4/29/08. Assembly Memorandum 209-2008 accompanies this ordinance. That's it on the addendum. I have items laid on the table. I have 7 items in front of me and a piece of paper that has 6 listed. I'll start with Mr. Sullivan because he has 2008-43. Mr. Sullivan, you're first on the list. You want to move to incorporate onto the addendum and give me a number for it?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir.
It's an ordinance, so it'd be what, 9F?
No, sir, that was the ordinance introduced last meeting.
Oh,
I just gave you a copy of that for the Ethics Committee
my
meeting,
mistake.
so you'd have it for reference, sir.
My apology. Sorry. I thought it was
introduced.
something new.
Nope, sorry.
All right. Okay. Ms. Osiander?
I would
9F.
move to introduce.
No, incorporate
What?
into the addendum.
All
You want
right.
to introduce them, or you?
Oh, I'm asking you what.
Well,
you
we
think.
usually incorporate them into the addendum and then give people an opportunity to pull them if they want.
All right, I'd like to move to incorporate into the addendum AO 2008-48, which is
Second.
Chapter 4 in Title 21, AO 2008-49, which is Chapter 5, and AO 2008-50, which is Chapter 6.
Can I have a second on all of those, please? Thank you.
And I do have public hearing dates, but I'll give those later.
Yeah, right. Folks, these are, Ms. Osiander announced these earlier. They're taking the chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the Title 21 revision and
splitting
breaking
it.
them into separate provisions. Okay. Without a... We're just incorporating it into the addendum. You have, the clerk suggests we put public hearing dates.
I could
Ms.
do that,
Osiander?
sir.
Go ahead.
All right, for Chapter 4, which is AO 48, I would ask that the public hearing date be May 6th.
May 6th.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead.
For Chapter 5, which is AO 49, June 10th.
Okay, 6/10/08,
And for AO 2008-50, which is Chapter 6, June 24th.
6/24/08. Any objection to those public hearing dates or comments? Seeing none, any objection to the incorporation of these 3 items into the addendum? Seeing and hearing none, those are incorporated. Ms. Johnston or Ms. Osiander or Mr. Klayman on the next 3, please.
Move to add these items to the agenda. AO 2008-51, surcharge to landfill tipping fees. AO 2008-52, variable garbage collection rates.
Second.
And AO 2008-53, which is a composting facility ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. And Ms. Osiander, the public hearing dates for these are all?
Mr. Abbott, what did we discuss, the 29th?
Thank you. April 29th.
April 29th for the public hearing. Any objection to the incorporation of these items into the addendum and and the public hearing dates? Seeing none, those items are incorporated into the addendum. Now, let's go through the consent agenda and pull those items that I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, and then we'll go through and pull them, I think. Is that right?
So moved.
All right. Okay, starting with Mr. Teshi, anything to pull?
None.
Mr. Trainey?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Sullivan?
No items.
Mr. Starr?
9D1.
9 Delta 1?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
I'm going to have Ms. Osiander pull 9 Delta 2 for me to make some disclosures, but we'll go on past that. Ms. Osiander.
Delta 2.
Oh.
I had it, was ready to
I wanted to
go.
remind you.
I
There we
had
go.
it, I'm on top of it.
Next. Anything else?
No.
All right. Ms. Johnston, anything to pull? No, thank you. Mr. Birch?
Yes, I would like to pull, let's see, it was added this evening at 9, let's see, let me get the number right here.
Yep.
It's a $75 million port 9F10.
Okay.
That's it. Thank
Yep,
you.
thank you. Mr. Bauer?
No items.
Ms. Selcraig? Mike, I'm sorry.
9E1,
Why don't you pull, 9E1? Okay, very good.
Information memorandum.
And is that it? Mr. Clayman?
No items.
Very good. Please, on the other items on the consent agenda, we have a motion to approve. Please vote. Are we ready, Madam? Hang on. Let the clerk catch up with us. We ready? We're voting on the consent agenda that have not been pulled. Oh, that's right. Mr. Teshi is not here. Let me ask this, since he's not here, rather than go through this. Is there objection to the approval of the consent agenda except for the items pulled? No objection, right?
No.
Seeing and hearing none, that is approved by unanimous consent. Thank you. I forget, Mr. I have to
Question
do
for
that.
information.
Yes, ma'am.
Every time someone is absent, we cannot use the system? That's a major problem.
By code, it needs to be a roll call vote.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
By code, it needs to be a roll call vote if somebody is telephoning in.
Okay, so if he's not telephoning in, though, we can use the system.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
We can look at the code again in light of our new.
Yeah, well, we might want to take a look at that because you could ask for one vote and everybody else could vote. But we're going to try to use unanimous consent on those items after we've deliberated, and if we can, just to save time. Thank you, sir.
It's nice to use the
Okay,
system.
we have the first item, as I see it, is, and correct me, Madam Clerk, if I'm wrong, 9D1, Mr. Starr.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Starr.
Yeah, I pulled this for a couple points. One is to clarify the process that we're at with this transfer of liquor license to a store upgrade, Walmart and Eagle River primarily. So the clarity would be also for any questions that the public may have on where we're at with that. The conditional use application so far, and maybe Jacqueline, you can help me, the conditional use permit's not been applied for yet on this then. So there's two parts. We have the transfer request application and the 60 days, and then typically for the liquor store to actually open, you have to have a conditional use permit in place.
Is that correct, Ms. Duke?
It hasn't been applied for.
All right. And we're protesting on that basis, no conditional use.
Correct. So typically,
until
to satisfy the protest, the conditional use permit would have to be approved. That's how that works?
It's protested until they apply and are approved for conditional use.
Great. I also want to add to the notes on the protest, and I'm not sure how to do it based on just the municipal clerk's memorandum, but near line 40 and 41, I'd like to also suggest that we protest based on some corrected or until corrected inaccuracies in the application itself.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Is there a second? Thank you. Could you tell us what the inaccuracies are for clarity?
Yeah, there may be others, but specifically Section 6, which is going to be just on the back of the memorandum. Section 6 talks about the proximity to schools and churches, and I suspect, without actually measuring it, there's an error in the closest church measurement. There's actually a church directly across the street, and so we'd like to ask for support and protest that until that application information is clarified, specifically that we remain under protest. We can get that out to the community. So I guess those two issues with the conditional use under protest as well as this inaccuracy in the application.
Ms. Osiander, on that motion to amend?
No, I'm supportive. I just have a process question. There has been I've received several emails and phone calls on this. My understanding of the process is there's no further public hearing opportunities. Is that correct on the conditional use permit? Do we know?
Well, through the chair, I guess, when our opportunities at planning and zoning, we saw the conditional use public hearing as it was scheduled. Is there not one?
I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw them when we were there.
Let me help. Conditional uses for liquor licenses come before this body, and there is a public hearing.
Oh, so we will see.
We will see it.
Yeah, it just didn't come with this.
Okay, I thought it was at the P and Z level.
No,
but,
it's at our level.
Okay.
They're the only one. Having spent 30 years in front of you dealing with them years ago when I was in business. Okay. Is there anything else? Mr. Clayman?
Just making sure I think, Mr. Coffey, you clarified my question, but this is under protest, and so what it means is that they will come apply for a conditional use permit, which the clerk advises us has not been applied for yet.
Yes.
Once it's applied for, then they will come before us to either get it approved or not approved, and if it's approved, then the next step would be to get the license, which is currently.
That's correct.
Okay.
Assuming that Mr. Starr's amendment's approved, then they're going to have to do the correction relative to the distance measurement from the church, which is really a notification question. I will note only this, the law provides that they're supposed to make an application for a conditional use within 7 days of applying for a permit, so they haven't done that either, but I don't know what the consequences of their failure to do that. But we do get to act on the conditional use application.
And presumably later act on this if the conditional use is
No,
approved.
if we approve the conditional use, then it's an automatic.
Okay.
Protest is our opportunity to tell the ABC board there is something wrong with the application in our judgment, and they have final say on protests. But they always honor the conditional use. That's never ever been a question. Because there's a provision in Title IV that says land use matters are exclusive province of the local government. Okay. Any objection to Mr. Starr's amendment? I'm asking unanimous consent. Any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is approved. Is there any other further amendments or discussion on the main motion to approve the protest? Seeing none, is there any objection? I'm asking again for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the memorandum protesting this until those two items are dealt with? I see no objection. That is approved as amended. All right. Ms. Osiander.
Move to,
9D2, yeah.
Move to approve 9D2, which is the, excuse me, do I need to, liquor license renewals in Midtown, Downtown, North Star, Spenard, Taku, Campbell, Eagle River, Fairview, Northeast, and Turning Arm.
Thank you. There's been a second, and we have that. Okay. Now, there's no one else in the queue. Let me make a disclosure here. Disclosures. As all of you know, and probably most of the public knows, for years we did, my old firm did liquor licensing work. Over the period of time, we have represented El Tango, Tempura Kitchen, the O, the Ramada, not the Ramada Inn, the two Tesoro stores down on, that's on page 1 of D2 under the AM 199-2008. I have been of counsel since 1 January 07 at my law firm. I don't know if my old law firm still represents these people in any respect. I have no financial interest in whether they do or whether they don't. This is just a cautionary matter to say that when I was an owner of the firm in the past, that we did work for these people.
Mr. Coffey, you've said you've had no financial affairs that impact these. Do you have any personal?
No, these were all business relationships when they existed.
Okay, and you're not currently dealing with any of these?
No.
All right, the chair's going to rule then that you do not have a conflict and you should participate. Is there objection to the chair's ruling? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in, and I will ask if there's any other discussion on all of these renewals. I see none. I will note this. For some reason, the ABC board sent us information relative to Kodiak liquor licenses. I talked to the staff, and I asked, why is that in our package? And the answer is, and rightly so, the staff gives us what the ABC board gives them. So even though we have something from Kodiak in there, we would not want the staff excising things. I have no idea why the ABC board sent us stuff on Kodiak. I'm assuming if we took action on a Kodiak liquor license that the folks in Kodiak might not appreciate it, but it's there by mistake. Okay, I will note one other thing. Remember this, folks. If there are problem licenses, we have asked, through an ordinance that Mr. Teshi introduced, and we all supported 3 years ago, we have asked the police department to bring us problems if they exist. And we've asked them to do it in a timely fashion, which under the ordinance I believe was in October. It's now March. We have not heard on any of these licenses about any objection from their continued operation by the police department. So I think what that means to us is that under our ordinance, there's not a pattern of practices, although maybe there's a violation or two, there's not a pattern of practices which our ordinance requires for us to protest renewal. Ms. Osiander.
Thank you, Mr. Teshi. Once again, you jumped in on something I was about to ask. I got a call from someone who said that there was a sale to an underage person with one of these businesses, the Ramada LTD, and we didn't see any kind of police report. Are there any comments that you have?
Which one, 95 or 96?
Mr. Chairman?
Hang on. Ms. Osiander has the floor, and Deputy Chief Plummer's coming forward. Go ahead.
No, ma'am. We do have some police reports reference some of the establishments involved. One particular report doesn't necessarily meet the queue for us to have a concern about a business.
Okay. Deputy Chief, Mr. Coffey stated a concern about this new ordinance. That's also a concern of mine, and it came up when he and I met with the mayor's office and staff on Monday. I have assumed that the police department would be proactive and bring to us reports if there's a particular establishment that's causing problems. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Teshi, the chief or the deputy chief's here if you'd like to ask questions, or go ahead otherwise.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, only that I would yield to comments by the deputy chief.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
I just, because we get these renewals and because we may have some concerns about them, what we were trying to do was make sure that we afforded anybody who was operating a business that was causing concerns would have due process to be heard in front of us before we protested. And that's what Mr. Teshi's ordinance did, and I think did it very effectively. And I think if our police department sees an isolated incident or two and determines in its judgment, which we gave them under the ordinance, not to proceed with some sort of action, then that's probably appropriate. And if, on the other hand, they believe that there's a pattern of practices that is illegal in some fashion, it's my hope and belief that they will bring it forward. Mr. Traney?
Just, Ms. Osiander, was it 95 or 96? Because they've got two licenses. Which one did you get a complaint on? And I just don't see an ABC violation, because usually serving to underage minors.
That's in here,
Mr. An ABC
Traney.
violation.
I don't remember.
It's in here. It's toward the. I just had it. It's in the package, and it's clearly there's a notice of violation from the ABC board, but nothing from APD.
And Mr. Traney, my concern is I've been relying on the police department to come forth and give us a report if there's a problem establishment, and I just really wanted to make sure that they were still online to do that. After I heard this, they had this one.
Like you said, top of them all.
It could very well could be an isolated instance.
It's about three-quarters of the way back in the package, Mr. Traney.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I have Mr. Clayman. Or Ms. Osiander, I'm sorry. Do you have something further? No, okay. Mr. Clayman?
Just a point of information that in these packets we routinely receive reports of ABC violations that are actually instituted not by Anchorage Police but by the ABC board. They periodically have undercover operations where they send somebody on into the places that I presume looks older than in fact they are. The person doesn't get carded, and then there's a violation issued. And so on those enforcement violations that we routinely see in these packets, APD is not involved with those. That's a ABC board operation, as I understand it.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we all understand that what we're seeing is not police, and they wouldn't necessarily know that.
Well, no, because the requirement is that notice of violation gets sent to APD. So they theoretically should have knowledge, and I would hope that if there's either of the agencies identifies a pattern of practices that they would, and I know they do this, work cooperatively to deal with it. All right.
But it doesn't imply that there's Anchorage police officers involved in the ticketing that took place.
Oh, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing that I've noticed, and you'll notice over time, is they'll run multiple sting operations throughout, and someone will pass it, some business will pass it 5 times, and then on the 6th one they get somebody makes a mistake and they get stung, and you hear about the sting but you don't hear about the 5 times they pass. So if we ever get to a point of taking action, we'll need to get a much better set of information than just what we have here. But there doesn't seem to be anything here that indicates that kind of thing. Okay. Is there anybody else who needs to say anything on the renewals of these, whatever it is, 20 licenses? Is there, again, I'll ask unanimous consent. Is there objection to approval of this, which will not protest renewal of any of these licenses? I see no objection. Those licenses, that matter is approved. Ms. Selcraig, 9E1. Mike, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We had an audit done, and the
Move
audit...
to accept.
Oh, move to accept. Thank you.
Okay, push your button. Remember, our new system.
Yeah.
And there we go. We're in. Thank you.
The audit identified several problems with the Maximo work order system, and I was just wondering, I assume that the administration is going to follow up, but usually these audits actually indicate that you are. And number one, there's the issue that they don't have a comprehensive maintenance plan for the facilities, labor hours to be posted, and there was just a variety of things listed. I'm just wondering, we do these audits so that we can actually develop better practices, and I'm wondering what the response is to solving these problems. Or
Alan's coming forward. You just have the cover sheet. I don't know if you have the audit itself, but in it there are the management response. We basically agree with the auditor's findings and have implemented corrections.
Typically, that shows up in our report, so maybe it was just excluded, and I noticed that you didn't have a response, so I was just curious as to what you were...
No, there is a response to all the findings, and we actually have a new system that's being brought online, and that'll be online here by the end of the month. Well, the part of the problem is the system is so antiquated, and it doesn't, there's 2 systems or 2 ways of doing business. It has to report to PeopleSoft also, so there's duplicate data input, so we're trying to eliminate all that, and this new system should take care of all that. The comprehensive plan basically is different facilities require different things based on the size, the complexities of the infrastructure, and that's part of the comments is that we didn't have a plan, the same plan for every facility. And what we're going to do under the new system, we're going to inventory each building and through in-house staff and some engineers, and we will look through the whole infrastructure of the facility and put it in the system. And what this will also do is give us a capital planning long-term, so we'll know what kind of money we've spent for repairs and do all those things.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Ms. Osiander, then Mr. Starr. Ms. Osiander?
Well, I just want to say that when I read that blue report, it identified problems, but it also clearly stated that you were addressing them and that the management was concurring with results of the audit. So that's why I didn't pull it. So thank you.
We've been working for over about 16 months to get a new system on board because we knew there was problems with it.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, hold it. Don't leave it.
Just wanted to state on the corrected item, and it's sort of kudos. Warehouse and logistics is my background, of course, and you've done a $178 adjustment on a $400,000 inventory, which is pretty good. And I think with that kind of product and inventory, tires in particular, moving through the fleet, to have that, granted there may be tire sizes or count quantities off, but at the end of the day, I think the people's inventory that they own is well protected over there. And so kudos to see that adjustment amount of $178 and change. That showed good diligence from the costing perspective, and I appreciate your responses on correcting any other deficiencies. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one further in the queue. I will ask unanimous consent for acceptance of this matter. Is there any objection to its acceptance? Seeing none, let the record reflect that's accepted by unanimous consent. That brings us, I think, then to 9F10. Mr. Birch.
Move to approve.
Second.
No. Push buttons, please. Move is Mr.
Move to introduce.
Move to introduce. I do not have a button.
Okay, well, Mr. Clayman moved and Mr. Bauer seconded for you, so we're good to go. Go ahead, Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I pulled this because of concerns continuing concerns voiced by constituents that have not been adequately addressed regarding the long-term obligations. And I guess I just want to put the folks at the port on notice that we will be looking for a business plan that identifies the full range and scope of liability that we'll have. Estimations approach $100 million a year over the next 4 to 5 years that we'll be obligated as a community to pay as a project moves forward. And I think we just need to make sure we've got a good understanding of where that liability lies, and we don't, basically build something that we can't support. So I think we've got time between now and the public hearing date, and I just would encourage the port to come forward with that information. Thank you.
Okay, I would indicate two things, Mr. Birch. There's a wealth of paper. I don't see anyone from the port here, but yeah, come on down. We've had a couple of work sessions on this, and I'm not sure that you need to come down, but my understanding is that this commercial paper does not involve the full faith and credit of the municipality. It's a revenue bond sort of deal, and I would just want to make sure that before this matter comes before us on the 15th, that those materials are made available once again to all assembly members. I know that sometimes we can't all make all meetings, but the information can sure be available to all of us.
And I would emphasize the public as well, because I think that's the constituency that I'm representing.
Yep. Is that online? That information available online? Thank you for coming down. I got you running back and forth here. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Rebuffo, the Deputy Port Director. If it's not online, I think we can make it available online as soon as possible.
Would you do that?
Yes,
that would
sir.
help, and that would answer Mr. Birch's. Then he can send his constituents over, and they can do their own reading.
Absolutely.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything further on this, which did we have a first, second, and a third for introduction? Thank you. We've got it all, Madam Clerk, and you have it?
Third.
Okay. Any objection to the introduction? Seeing none, that is introduced by unanimous consent. My records show now we have completed the Yeah, it says that in there, doesn't it? Public hearing is set for the 15th. Okay. By my record, that shows completion of the consent agenda. Is there anything further that I've missed? All right. They tell me dinner's here. What's the wish of the body? You want to go in, or you want to do a little more work?
Let's break.
Let's break. Okay. First one to speak gets their way.
Excellent.
Yes, I'll be back at 6:30.
Might get out of here early.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, that's a good point. It ought to be out there. It's 300 million. If we would, please. Ms. Ostiander, thank you. They're here. Is Mr. Birch here? There. We think we have a solution for you on your computer, yes. We log you in as Mr. Teshi, who is on the phone and doesn't have a machine, and then when the votes come, the clerk will reflect that it's Mr. Birch who's voting in that fashion or whatever, but... Hang on, Mr. Teshi. You're about to be squared away. Is that going to work, technical staff? Does Mr. Birch now have a machine in front of him that works? Yes? Does Mr. Birch now have a machine in front of him that works? Fine. Okay, so the only person we're missing is Mr. Clayman. Mr. Tesche's on the phone, right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, he is.
Good, okay. All right, process. We're at item 11A, which is a policy, let's see, that item was zero waste, I know, the motion to approve was on the floor. It was postponed for a week to have further discussions. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Ms. Osiander.
The only concern that really came up, I think, could be addressed by a simple clarification from the administration that this isn't necessarily obligating us to any expenditures.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Selcraig.
I just wanted to let you know that I talked with Green Star today, and they're looking forward to working with us to work with businesses in the community and kind of expand their efforts, and they expressed an appreciation to see this coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing and hearing no one, this motion is before us to approve the resolution on zero waste, AR 2008-37. Since we aren't all here, Mr. Tesche's on the phone, we do a voice call, but what I'm going to do is ask for unanimous consent. And is there any objection to this? I see no objection. Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that this matter is approved by unanimous consent. Okay. Now we have items 13A and 13B, and before we do it, I'd like a motion to join the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Is there objection to combining the public hearing? They're related. All right. Next objection? Mr. Birch.
I just had a point of personal privilege. We have a lonely item up for public hearing, item 13C, and I was just wondering if we might move that.
13B.
Excuse me. 13C.
Well,
how many people are here to testify on 13C?
Yeah, that's 13C. We got two. I need a motion.
I'd move to have item 13C move to the head of the 13 group for public hearing.
Is there objection to changing the order of the day to take 13C up? It looks like we got two people to testify. Shouldn't take very long. I don't understand it to be controversial. I see no objection. All right. Public hearing on item 13C, AO 2008-14, new funding program for roads incorporated into ARDSA. Anyone wishing to testify, please come down.
Hello, my name is Catherine Woods, and I'm the chair of the Paradise Valley South LURSA. I'm joined by my colleague Dusty Kaiser, who is also a member of the board.
Good evening. Proceed.
We wanted to simply thank you for your consideration of this motion. We are the first LURSA hoping to take advantage of this. We are exceedingly excited to finally have an opportunity to do some road improvements, and are seeing strong property owner and homeowner support, and we would urge a yes vote, and thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Anything to add, sir?
No, thank you.
All right. I have Ms. Johnston.
And your service district is in favor of participating in the RID, and you're all in support of this, right?
At this point, we've held several neighborhood meetings. We're seeing very strong neighborhood homeowner and property owner support. We'll put that to test in a series of votes to come up, but at this point, we believe we have significant support, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have no one else in the queue. Is there...
Move to approve?
No, thank you. I need to close the public hearing, and I need a motion to approve and so on. Thank you. It's so funny. We have a new system that shows the mover is Selcraig and the second is Trainee, and the oral people were Mr. Birch and Ms. Johnston. Madam Clerk, since this reflects more of an instance in Mr. Birch and Ms. Johnston's district, I would ask that the record reflect that they are the mover and the seconder. All right. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Birch. Oh, you can punch in now.
That's right. I can punch in as Alan Teske.
Yes. Mr. Birch. Which is Probably the highlight of your career.
This is really a treat, I have to tell you.
Go ahead. We can't pick on him now.
I just want to thank the body for that indulgence here and moving that item to the front of the public hearing list. And also, we're very excited in South Anchorage. We have a lot of road requirements, road maintenance issues, and this is a great opportunity for communities to kind of, and neighborhoods to kind of take the project in hand and move forward with it. And we're real excited about how this is going to happen. So thank you for your time, and I'd like to thank the administration as well for working with us on this. So, thank you.
Ms. Selcraig, as yourself.
Thank you. When I was planning director, we struggled with how to deal with these issues in terms of how to help people come into Larsa when they wanted to, what a fair structure was. And I'm just really appreciative to see the structure available. I think over time it's going to serve us well, because I think it's going to provide a way that eventually we can become one whole district and without forcing people into it. And I think it's a fair shake in terms of cost, so I'm really appreciative of the work that went into this to make it happen. It's a good deal for the whole city. Thanks.
Thank you. I have no one else in the queue, but new system. If anybody else wants to weigh in and they can't get in, I don't have anybody. All right. Is, again, asked unanimous consent on the approval of this new program for funding roads for those road service areas incorporated into the Anchorage Roads and Drainage Service Area. Is there any objection to the approval of that? Madam Clerk, let the record show unanimous consent to the approval of item 13C. Okay. Now, we're going to 13A. I think we got the motion to combine the public hearings. Was that approved without objection, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. So the public hearing is combined on items 13A and 13B. One is the dogs in the ball fields, and the other is the fines associated with it. Now,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Could we also combine the public hearing for the fines? You did already.
Yes.
Pardon me.
A and B. Okay. Now, here's the situation. 5 months ago, more or less, when these matters were first up, we put them off until this date because we were asking people to work together to see if there was a solution that could be supportive of everybody. So we didn't need legislation. If you listen to one set of concerns, there's a problem with the dogs and the feces and the not picking it up. And if you listen to the other set of concerns, there's public parks and facilities that need to be used as widely as possible and open to as many of our people as possible. As a result of these interests, what we ask people to do, and I know a lot of people have done this, is work collaboratively to come up with a solution. Mr. Clayman, Ms. Selcraig, and I have corresponded mainly with folks and with ourselves on this, and what we would propose, I believe, and will be supported by the body, I believe, at the end of the adventure here, is that we put these ordinances off for a season, I think, and we'll talk about whether it's May 15th of 09 or June 1st or whatever, but get a date out in the future to see if the cooperative effort that has manifested itself over the last 4 or 5 months brings fruit, so that we start to change the culture here about how people take care of their property, the public property, and their animals, and the things that are associated with little leaguers and dogs and ball fields and all of the things we enjoy. We hope very much it does that. And with that, I would then like to call on Mr. Clayman and then Ms. Selcraig just to echo or say whatever they want to say about this before we begin the public hearing. Go ahead, Mr. Clayman.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that's really apparent, just by a show of hands, how many people are here tonight to talk about these two ordinances? All right. And it's good to know that it isn't the whole room.
I'm sorry, did you hear the bark? Okay, Mr. Mayor, I mean, it's your side that came with that, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Teshi?
How many people in the audience?
30 or 40.
30 or 40?
Yeah.
Dogs inside the audience and outside the audience wanting to testify?
Well, they were here on this issue. Now, we're going to get to the testimony, so hang on a second. Go ahead, Mr. Clayman.
Anyway, what we saw as a product of putting these ordinances forward is a real response from the community, both from primarily baseball users who were concerned about fields that weren't kept clean, and dog users who were concerned about full access to all of our parks and not restricting access to any user. And the result was a lot of suggestions and a lot of ideas, and more than anything else, a commitment from the community to really try to work with the different groups to, for example, dog owners work with baseball groups to make sure the fields are kept clean and to help the baseball groups clean up at the early part of the season, which is coming in the next couple of weeks when the fields clear and they start clearing the fields and cleaning the fields so folks can play baseball, and looking for more than just baseball players cleaning the fields, and just a community response so that we can look and say we didn't need to change the law, we didn't need to raise the fines, because this community responded, and people are pleased to see ball fields that kids can play on without having to step in dog do, and dog owners can also use those same fields when the kids aren't there and use those fields as well. And so that's what we're looking for, and I think this is an opportunity to show that the community can respond without the legislative branch taking action.
Thank you, Mr. Klayman. Ms. Selcraig.
I was very appreciative that people who were working on this visited with the community councils I know in my district, and I'm sure that they did it all over the city. I happened to be at meeting after meeting with Patty Ginsburg, who rolled out a proposal for public involvement in terms of cleaning up the dog debris. I also think that what this did is it galvanized dog owners to think about what's important over time to meet the needs of the many dog owners that we have in the community. And I'm hoping that as a group you'll stay together and be thoughtful. One of the things that we just briefly talked about in one meeting is the potential of over time, if we need to think about adding a small increase to the dog license to help clean up. I mean, if that's a requirement, or even beginning to think about how do you put some resources into developing some good parks that are fenced so people can have those kinds of spaces for dogs and training. I think there's a variety of things to think about over time in terms of tweaking this and making it work. And I know that as a group we were glad to work with you. And I think ultimately it's so much better to function in a positive way, creating, rather than punitively making changes, kind of creating the incentives in the public to do the right thing. And certainly in terms of our police time and our resources, it's a better way of going. So I'm really happy to see this come forward, and I'm hoping that we'll support it this evening.
Thank you.
Change.
Okay, now here's where I think we are going, just so everybody knows. I would like that, to the extent that we don't spend 2 or 3 hours testifying about something which I think most of us will support, and in light of the fact that I believe we will postpone both of these ordinances indefinitely for reintroduction if and only, emphasis please, only if we find that this does not address the problem, that we hear from a few people, and I hope that means a few people, and that be the end of it, and we do things by show of hands. We support what that person said, or we don't, and that will enable us to continue to get through our business with some degree of alacrity, while at the same time making a good record of what we're trying to do here. So, with that in mind, unless anyone else has anything to say about it, the public hearing on both items is now open, and anyone who wishes to testify can sure come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Patty Ginsburg. For the record, the last name is spelled Ginsburg. I chair the Animal Control Advisory Board and co-chair People and Pets in Public Spaces, or PIPS, because everyone must have an acronym. PIPS is a working group of the Animal Control Advisory Board and the Parks and Recreation Commission. It was formed to address overlapping issues and to improve communications between the two bodies. The issue raised by the ordinance at issue today was an obvious focus for our initial work. It was very much of interest to both our boards. We agree that there's a problem, but we believe there are some very positive ways to solve it. It may not be sexy, but the best way to change human behavior is a combination of education, peer pressure, and shame. It also helps a lot. Shame. Sorry, Dan. Shame. It also helps a lot if you make good behaviors easy to do. Our plan addresses each of these components. The action plan put forward by PIPS, and I apologize because I believe you all may not have the most current issue, and we will get that to you right away. It includes a long-term strategy for raising public consciousness and therefore changing the behavior, and short-term efforts to mitigate the problem of dog waste in ball fields this spring and summer. The plan relies heavily, though not exclusively, on volunteer efforts. Every indication we've seen since publicizing this plan has been very, very promising. People want to solve the problem, and they understand what needs to be done. I have to say thank you, Chairman Coffey, for bringing this issue forward. It's important that when there are problems in the community, folks become aware of them. There are solutions. There are often solutions that can come from within the community. We think this is one of them. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, I've got a list here in the queue. Mr. Traney, you're first.
Just that I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I got to tell you, that kid is so cute in your poster. He's just a darling kid.
Mr.
I could even make my grandson one day.
Oh, God. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Traney. Ms. Osiander.
Ms. Ginsburg, I want to thank you for your efforts. Absolutely, I learned a lot. I've talked to a lot of people, and you helped spearhead a large number of organizations that have been working on this solution. It sounds great. I'm very eager to see how this all folds out. I attended some meetings where I learned that various groups are even talking about adopting fields and taking the responsibility there, which is super good. But basically, thank you, and I'm going to be very supportive of postponing this indefinitely to see what comes out of your efforts.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I have no one else in the queue. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Please come on forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Penny Golden, and I'm here before you this evening to speak on behalf of the Alaska Kennel Club. The Alaska Kennel Club has been a part of Anchorage since 1947, and currently we count approximately 100 members. And to be quite honest, I came here this evening ready to vehemently speak against this ordinance, but I see I don't have to, and I'm just so happy. So let me say that we unanimously support the plan that the PIPS has come up with. We think that it is just great. We passed a unanimous resolution to that effect, and we see it as a viable and potentially effective way to address the poop problem on our sports fields, parks, coastal trail, and so forth. The Alaska Kennel Club agrees to offer assistance and support in the education and outreach campaign outlined in the PIPS plan, and we are going to help promote a strong ethic of responsible dog ownership in the municipality and help people avoid both avoid the poop and scoop the poop. And we hope that more and more people will learn. I agree with Patty that all three aspects, including the shame part, are going to play a big role. I will say that I grew up here in Anchorage, and when I was little and I had a dog, I mean, we just opened the door and the dog went out, and we called her back and she came home. I grabbed my fishing pole and went down the street, and she came with me, and while I was fishing, she was out doing her thing. And we've grown up, and the city has to grow up because we have so many dogs now, and everyone loves their dogs. And I don't think that anybody even thinks that when they leave that little pile there, what it's going to do when 50 other people do the same thing. So this is very good. We support the plan and support the Assembly, certainly if you decide to put off this ordinance for another year or indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no one in the queue to ask questions. Anyone else wishing to testify? Mr. Koniger, my old friend.
Mr. Coe, my name is Neil Kerniger, spelled Koeniger. I'm a member of the Animal Control Advisory Board, and I'm also a member of the PIPS Committee. I just wanted to amplify a little bit on Ms. Ginsburg's comments and Ms. Osiander's question about support for different fields. In addition to resolutions of support from a number of the Anchorage area clubs, we also have already had 3 of the clubs that have committed to a station for a ball field, and we have indications from 2 other clubs that they will purchase one as well. So it's not just a show of verbal support, but we've got some folks digging into their pockets to try and assist in resolving this problem.
Thank you.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, in Miss Osiander's district, the Obedience Training Club of Chugiak is one of the ones who not only passed a resolution in support of the program, but is sponsoring a poop station.
Wonderful. Mr. Preniger, could you please get me the names of those clubs? I'd like to, when they're done, I'd like to have a resolution recognizing and thanking them.
I'd be happy to.
But do it this way, Neil. Get it to the clerk. That way she can get it to all of us, and then if it's, in any one of our districts, we can thank them and we make sure it's done, not just all the wonderful folks from Chugiak.
I would be happy to get that to the clerk.
I appreciate it. All right. Okay. Anyone else wishing to testify? Mr. Felko, why don't you come a little closer? Then you don't have to up and down so often. No, go ahead, ma'am. We take our turns. Go ahead.
My name is Kathy Stevenson. I'm the current president of Alyeska Canine Trainers. Our club has also voted to approve the PIPS resolution. We have a strong history as a club of promoting responsible dog ownership. I think looking over our records as this issue arose, on a year-to-year basis, we can have over 1,000 dogs enrolled in our beginner and puppy classes every year. That's classes that have a very, very strong component of teaching responsible ownership. In addition, we sponsor the annual Mutt Show, another event that heavily promotes responsible ownership, and quarterly CGCs, which also do. In addition, we have, over the last several years, sponsored at least 2 poop pickup stations around the city in accordance with animal control. We do very strongly support this ordinance and are very willing to add whatever abilities we have to promoting more responsible ownership, responsible poop pickup, I guess, for lack of a better term, throughout the city.
All right. Thank you. I have no one in the queue. Good evening, sir.
Hi, my name is Mike Fetko. Please, I apologize for my voice. I lost it this weekend coaching wrestling. So, my name is Mike Fetko. Last name is Fetko, and I'm the vice president of Far North Little League. I represent over 400 young boys and girls ages 5 to 14 years old and their families who spend thousands of hours each summer and fall maintaining our beautiful ball fields. Weeding, snow blowing, aerating, repairs due to vandalism, repairs from weather damage, repairing mowers and equipment, mowing the grass, filling holes left by dogs, fixing sprinkler heads from dogs digging at the sprinkler heads, fixing divots from dogs running on the infield because they do create a indentation where the dogs run, picking up dog waste in and around the ball fields. And another big problem is the dog urine in the outfields and the grass and the infields and the grass because it does kill the grass that we work so hard to keep clean. Our league provides the services to the Anchorage community. It furnishes the physical facilities, volunteer services, and resources to provide a program for our children. Far North raised $375,000 in generous private donations for construction of our fields, as well as $90,000 of in-kind contributions of labor, services, equipment towards actual construction of our ball fields. This showed how the Anchorage community came together to show their support to provide a facility for our children here in Anchorage. I am a responsible dog owner as well. Sadly, unlike a lot of these fine, organized dog owners behind us, some pet owners just aren't upstanding citizens by picking up after their pets. I personally don't take my dog to the ball fields to run around or train in because I know firsthand how much work the volunteers from our community put into these ball fields to keep them beautiful, safe, clean, healthy environment for the children to play in. There's nothing more heartbreaking to have a little girl come up to you and crying because she fell in a pile of doggy doo. I'll give you an example real quick. Last summer I was over mowing the fields and a gentleman was sitting on the hood of his car in the parking lot reading his newspaper. He had his dog in the ball field running around loose. I happened to see him do his business on the fields, and I politely talked to the gentleman, asked if he would please pick up after his dog, and he said to me, look, I didn't see him do it. I'm not going to clean it up. My dog has every right to these ball fields because it's taxpayer money. So, of course, no conflict. I proceeded and I picked it up. So, yesterday I went over to our Far North Park and to see how well the picking up after pets and dog owners is going, which I put on video that some of you have. The trailhead and the entrance of our ball fields where some way stations are and some signages to ask people to be good neighbors by picking up after their pet. However, from the video you can see it just didn't work. It's pretty bad over in those areas. Allowing pets even on leashes during our summer and fall leagues present safety concerns for the children, not only here in Anchorage, but also in the United States that I found. There have been dog bites unprovoked on children that are present. Other issues are dog altercations between another dog, while a bystander trying to break up the dog altercation sometimes gets bit, and unintentionally as well. The majority that I found, research on the internet and other Little League organizations, the majority of the lower 49 cities have similar ordinances to this one here, but not only baseball fields, but other sport complexes as well. Phoenix, San Diego, Las Vegas, for example, have specific fenced-in dog areas, and they're included into the sport complex facilities as well. Equal access to city property only goes so far. For example, the Nordic Ski Club raises money through private donations, sales of the pins that groom our Anchorage trails. However, dogs are not permitted on the hillside trails or the majority of the Kincaid Park trails. The reasons are they ruin the trails that they work so hard to groom, and pet waste. Currently, here in Anchorage, we don't allow the dogs in Anchorage Football Stadium, CAR-T, adult softball fields, adult baseball fields. There are many dog parks here in Anchorage. I don't take my personal football team or my baseball team to those dog parks and practice or have games. Places I feel are built for specific purposes: dog parks, soccer fields, football fields, baseball fields, softball, horse complexes, golf areas. This is why we have designated multi-use trails, especially for these type of purposes. Dog trainers, dog rescue groups.
Mike, excuse me a sec. We generally allow 3 minutes. If you could wrap
3 minutes?
up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
All right. Well, dog trainers and dog rescue groups deserve their own fenced-in areas that they can maintain, such as the Nordic Club and the Little Leagues. Far North would like the Assembly to strongly consider some alternative solutions. One are, there are a lot of hockey rinks here in the Anchorage area that are fenced in, unused during the summer and fall. Additionally, dog parks around Anchorage should have their own section of fenced-in areas. There are many other older fenced-in ball fields that are not maintained or used by Little Leagues today around Anchorage. Valley of the Moon Park field is one, for example. And, of course, the best solution is setting aside a piece of property for these dog user groups to have a place of their own, to call home, that they can maintain the city property just like other Little League organizations do in Anchorage here today. And safety is our utmost concern for Little League children. There are many good dogs, however, we cannot ensure that a tail pull or jumping on kids won't result in injury. And although waste stations and signs help, they do not solve the problem. So we do support this ordinance.
Thank you very much.
You.
Mr. Traney has a question.
Mike, it's always good to see you again.
Yes, sir.
I remember when I first met you, you were a lot shorter.
Yes, sir.
Years ago. Thanks for you talking to us about the enclosed dog parks. When we created the 5 dog parks that we have, we did not create an enclosed one. I think we really need to do it. Because so many of the people have dogs, just don't feel good about letting their dogs go unless they're in a fenced area. So we need a dog park. I think Valley of the Moon would make a really good one to do that at. Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Selcraig.
Mike, I'm curious. Excuse me. I'm curious if today when you went to I don't remember which park you said. What park?
Far North Park.
Far North Park. If you had a phone number that you could dial from somebody from the community that just spoke before you, and you could call somebody who would come over immediately and work on that park, would that help?
Probably, yes.
I think what we're really looking for, on the Assembly right now as a way to make this work, recognizing that there are real needs on both sides and that nobody really wants kids playing in dog poop. I mean, there's an agreement with the people who are sitting in the audience that that's true. And so I guess what I would hope you could do this year is get to know each other and figure out how to leverage these human resources we have to do better, and then really do come back to us next year and talk about what we need to do to refine it and what kind of support we need to provide to the community. One of the things that I heard initially was that a lot of these fenced ball fields are close to people's homes, and in the winter, particularly when you can't walk on the streets, people are crossing the street to the ball field and using them. So there's this winter use that is probably really impacting it. And if we can figure out a way to clean it up immediately, get it out of the way as spring comes, and get people to clean as we go, maybe we can conquer it. So what I'm hoping you'll do is engage with each other and figure out how you can work together to solve this, and then let us know at the period, assuming that we postpone this, that we set, how it's going, and let's refine it from there. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. Well said. I have no one else in the queue. Thank you, Mr. Selkirk. Ms. Selkirk, that's very well said. Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing on this matter is closed. Mr. Clayman.
Move to continue indefinitely both ordinances.
Postpone, and let's do them one at a time. Okay.
Postpone indefinitely 13A, then.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Osiander.
Both A and
No, I
S?
asked him to do one at a time.
Yeah, I was asked to do one at a time, so it's 13A.
But there's an S version.
It would be the S version.
Thank you,
Move
sir.
to continue
was
move
it.
to postpone indefinitely.
All right, 13A. I've got a motion, I've got a second. Is there any objection? I'm asking unanimous consent.
Comment.
Mr. Sullivan, yes, go ahead.
No objection. I'm pushing my request to speak and doesn't look like it's...
Are you on the right
I'm on
topic?
Continued.
Go up to that top thing and push the white line, the red line through the white deal. It's a new system, Yeah, there you go.
Am I in?
I don't know. Push request to speak.
Yeah, it's not working. Anyway,
we bought a new system so that we wouldn't have these problems.
Since it's apparent this is going to be postponed indefinitely, I want to take the opportunity to thank you, Mr. Coffey, for bringing this forward. You received a lot of criticism out there in the world from people who said, gee, why aren't the Assembly dealing with more substantive issues? And as we heard from the testimony several months ago when this was first open for public hearing, this is a real issue. We heard from league managers and coaches and players that, really every spring have a big challenge in front of them that goes well beyond what should be their challenge, which is learning a great sport and enjoying an outdoor activity. Instead, they spend far too much time picking up after other people. So I think it was an issue worth bringing forward. And what's happened, of course, is as we work on the community response to it and see if the community effort really does work, and I hope it does, we've got to keep in mind that, as Mr. Fetko said, laws aren't designed to essentially deal with the responsible owners, and what we have here is a group of responsible owners. Laws are designed to protect us from irresponsible citizens, and that's what we're seeing out there, and that's why this law made some sense to me to think about. And as Mr. Fetko's pointed out, this is not an uncommon law in other jurisdictions. So the body is willing to give this a year and see what happens. I won't be on the body at that time, but I'll certainly keep a keen eye on this because there's a bit of a challenge out there. And again, the challenge isn't with responsible pet owners, it's with the irresponsible ones. And I have found in my experience of living here for 56 years, it's really hard to change irresponsible behavior. Maybe shame will work, Ms. Ginsburg. I have my doubts, but I'm willing to give it a try. So good luck to the effort, and I'm hoping Mr. Coffey will, and I'm sure he will, stay in tune with this effort. In a year from now, if the problem still exists, I think this body should revisit it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I wanted to just say two things. First of all, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for the kind words. Secondly, the responsible folks are here, and the irresponsible folks are probably out on the trails and in the ball fields right at this moment, enjoying a lovely evening while we're trying to address the problems they create. Secondly, we are discussing things like fence ballparks, and I met with Mr. Dillon tonight, and the Valley of the Moon Park, which Mike mentioned, is one of those places where we can do it. And if we afford opportunities like this, that say, hey, we need a fenced area for our animals and so on to train and so on and so forth, and we have these multiple opportunities, then we can be more selective and more special use for other places. And so I like Mr. Sullivan. I really do hope that this works. I love the idea of people coming together and solving a problem and not having to do a law. And I, too, grew up here, and we used to do the same thing. You know, me and my dog, his name was Casey, would go out the door, and off we'd go. But there wasn't 35,000 people in the town at that time, so it's now almost 300,000, and we need a change in our culture. So I'm going to support the postponement indefinitely of this, but I have 2 more years on this body, and I'll be back. Hopefully I won't have to be back. So I really hope that this works. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? If not, I'm asking unanimous consent for the postponement motion. Do I have objection? I see none. Let the record reflect this matter is postponed indefinitely. Mr. Clayman.
Move to postpone 13B, the S version, indefinitely.
Second.
Second. All right. Is there any further discussion? This is the fines portion. Mr. Clayman will undoubtedly assure us that he will be back in a year as well. Mr. Clayman.
And I will be back if we don't make progress. And I would note that the fines was not just limited to dog waste. It was increasing the fines for littering in parks across the board, because part of my view was that we have a litter problem in our parks, and we have that. I was just walking in, although I like to tell Mr. Kopp, you know, in my neighborhood they pick up the dog waste, but every morning when I walk the dog, I'm picking up bottles and cans and papers. So there is a litter problem too, and as a community we need to address that as well. But if we're not making progress, I'm happy to bring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Clayman. Anyone else? Seeing and hearing no one, again, I ask for unanimous consent on the postponement motion. Is there objection? Seeing and hearing none, that matter is postponed indefinitely. Thank you all very much. I hope to see you on the streets and not here on this issue ever again. Good night. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a minute and allow folks who'd like to leave to do so, and then we'll come back and we'll take up item 13D. Ms. Osiander, you have the floor.
I just want to, again, give people a heads up. If you're here to testify on Title 21, Chapters 4, 5, and 6, it's going to be my intent to instead deal with this in separate, discrete chapters. We introduced tonight Chapter 4 for hearing May. Should have written it down. Thank you. If you want to wait and speak on the distinct chapters, we should have available before we vote the Assembly Title 21 Committee suggested amendments. So you would be able to speak not only to the public hearing draft version and to the P&C draft version, but to the committee suggested amendments.
Thank you. Okay. Is it at the end of tonight, it's your intention to postpone 2008-36 indefinitely, and we'll go with the separate ones? Okay. Okay. Anybody who wishes to testify on 4, 5, or 6 under 2008-36 Title 21 revisions, knowing that we're going to be having public hearings on the 6th of May, the 10th of June, and the 24th of June on these individual chapters, is free to come forward tonight, and we'll be happy to hear from you. If anyone wishes to testify on that tonight, please come forward. Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is closed on 2008-36. Ms. Osiander.
To postpone indefinitely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, is there objection? I ask unanimous consent, given the fact we have 3 separate ordinances to handle this in more bite-sized increments. I hear no objection. Madam Clerk, let the record reflect that 2008-36 is postponed indefinitely. That brings us to item 14A, the annual operating budget of the Anchorage School District, item 2008 and 30. Now, before we start, I don't know how many people are here to testify on this, because if we have 50 or so people, I'm going to do a sign-up sheet. If we have a few, then we'll just come down like we did with the dog park. So if you're planning on testifying, we have just a few. Okay, we'll do it that way.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr, yes, and then Mr. Trainee. Mr. Starr?
Yeah, I have a disclosure. My wife is employed by the school district as a substitute nurse.
Okay. Mr. Trainee, you have a...
My wife's the school teacher.
All right.
The Anchorage School District.
We have had school district issues, or, a spouse of an employee, of an assembly member, many, many times before us. The consistent ruling is that is not a conflict of interest, and I would so rule unless there is other discussion or objection.
Well, before you rule, just so I can make the same disclosure,
Yes,
my wife also is, with Mr. Trainee, is a teacher with the school district.
Okay. Is there anyone else? I see no one. So I guess my ruling is this. I find that none of the members who made the disclosure have a substantial financial or private interest in the matter of the Anchorage School District budget, which is a $700 million budget, and little or nothing that they could do or say here would affect the salaries one way or another of their respective spouses. So I don't think it's a substantial part of the matter under consideration. I don't think the private interest to the extent that, or financial interest to the extent that it even exists, will be substantially affected by the outcome of the vote on this budget. And I think that the private financial or private interest is somewhat conjectural and dependent upon many factors beyond our vote. And so those are my findings. Is there objection to my ruling? Seeing and hearing none, those gentlemen shall participate in this matter. All right. Public hearing on the Anchorage School District budget for 2008 is now open. Go ahead. All right. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward. Familiar faces are approaching.
We will be brief. I'm Carol Como. I'm the superintendent with the school district.
Good evening, Ms. Como.
Good evening. And I would first like to thank all of you who were able to participate last Friday in the work session. I think the discussion was very productive, and I think we all had a good discussion. I also would like to thank both Ms. Frasca and the members of the Education Workforce Advisory Commission who also reviewed our budget and gave that report to you on Friday. So I think that our budget has been heavily scrutinized in a very public way, which I see as a positive. And I would just urge you to support this budget as submitted, and we are asking that you support our request to go to the cap in the local tax cap.
Tim Steele, School Board President. I, too, just rise to thank everybody for the effort that was put in terms of learning our budget process and reviewing our budget. Sheriff Ruska did a good job, as did the Workforce Development Commission. And so thank you all very much for having that work session. I think the discussion was great, and we stand to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
Yes, we spoke earlier about there might be a possibility of some funds coming through the capital budget for the state, and we're not quite sure what they're for yet. Maybe energy cost. And in this budget that's before us right now, you've already included the increase in energy cost in it. So what if you did receive further monies from the state for energy cost, or we're not sure what is your intent with those funds? What would you be doing with them?
Well, first of all, we have received, the legislature has approved and are awaiting Governor Palin's signature, and we're hoping, and talking with her Saturday night, that she is going to sign the education funding bill. That did not include energy costs. What it did include was an increase of $100 per student on the base. It included 9 times the base for intensive needs from 5, which is what the current law is, and a recalibration of the pupil transportation costs, which would fund us at the level of our audited transportation costs. We did not qualify for the district cost factor increases that all other districts in the state are getting, but we we are hoping that one-time money in the capital budget is what I think you're talking about, that the Senate was talking about today, that we will see that in the capital budget. It would be one-time funding. It really is trying to address the significant increases to energy costs. We all submitted our energy costs, utility costs, to the legislative research last week or 2 weeks ago, and so they're doing that around the state, collecting the data. And so at that point, we would look to the one-time expenditures that would be needed. But at this time, what this budget is does not include those extra funds. Just strictly the legislative funding task force report. That is what we build our budget on.
Right, but what I'm saying is in this budget, you addressed the increase in fuel cost, or you budgeted. We had the
Yes, as part of the, as part of the general fund increases.
So if you did receive an additional funding from the state to address those increase of fuel costs, what would you then do with those additional funds that you were saving because you got the additional monies?
Well, we developed our budget on the 100 increase to the base, but we also asked all of our directors and supervisors to bring an enhancement budget forward, that if the budget was passed according to Governor Palin's plan, but we did not use those figures. And so we have lists of enhancement that we would recommend, depending on what the funding would be. We would have to look at one-time costs versus recurring costs. And so that would have to be deliberated, because if in fact the new funding on energy is only one-time money, then we would address one-time expenditures. If we could have a combination of that depending on how the funding came. But we have a lot of lists for enhancements to our instructional program that were discussed fully during our budget development process and public hearings.
But I hear you say that if it was a one-time, that you would just go for a one-time type funding, you wouldn't do anything that would have an annual cost program to it.
That has been our past practice, and since I've been superintendent, the board and I have really tried very hard to use one-time funding for one-time expenditures.
Thank you.
Mr. Klayman.
You've made a brief reference to the 9 times factor increasing from 5 times for special needs children, and my understanding from the work session is that still doesn't come up to the full average cost for the special needs children, but what we're working towards with the legislature is to have a higher factor next year and another higher after that to get it up, but we're not trying to make that jump to the actual level in 1 year, and that the school district will continue to work to have the state funding for special needs be consistent with the actual costs.
Well, we're going to continue to lobby, but the 9 times and then the 11 times and the 13 is what is in the legislation that's passed. It still won't equal our cost. Our average cost this year is $81,000 per intensive needs student. And so what we'll get in the 9 times is closer, but we still will have to subsidize that with our other general fund revenues.
So in the legislation that's currently before the governor, there'll be an increase next year to 11 times and the year after that to 13 times.
Correct.
But then even at 13, that doesn't get us up to full.
Well, because the cost will increase every year.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Carol, thank you for being here. I'm going to fall a little bit just for clarification in regards to Ms. Johnston's question. Again, to repeat, if there was one time, I'm going to give you a scenario and ask you to respond. If there was one-time money in the capital budget for an allocation to the school district, and there was a corresponding reduction to your mill levy, what would be the impact?
I don't know that, and Janet is not here. I think that the levy, the mill rate, will be set in May. Is that when you set it? You said it?
April, May, yeah.
The local taxes, if we get increased revenue in the general fund in the past, that has not impacted the local taxes because it's always come after you've set the mill rate.
Right.
Because the legislature in the past has not dealt with education funding until the very end of the session, which is always was mid-May.
Right. But I don't want to talk about the foundation, but if you got a special capital single grant for energy or whatever, one time, what happens? I know the answer to this, so I'm just setting it up for you.
Well, I don't know the answer, so...
Well, why don't you just ask yourself, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I will. I'll talk to myself here in a second. But if you have one-time money, but there's a corresponding reduction in the mill levy, which is ongoing revenue stream, the following year you're going to have a gap.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's understood, because I think some of the line of questioning was headed down that path, and I just want to make sure and I want to confirm that why you have chosen the policy of one-time money for one-time expenditure is to avoid that scenario, that
yes,
there's not a substitution in the next year. You have this problem of now what do you do?
No, we would have to obviously make cuts, and that's why I think we've tried very, very hard consistently not to use one-time money for anything but one-time expenditures.
Would some of that one-time money, and again, I know you have I've heard from folks there's a list, but is some of that one-time money, for example, some of the deferred maintenance things that may be further down the list that you might accelerate because it might be a one-time opportunity to deal with it, are those the kind of things that fall into that category? As well as programmatic?
There are instructional things. There are some preventive maintenance type of projects. It could be more technology that would be a one-time purchase. It could range of varying things depending on what the needs are.
Upgrading equipment that has been old and
correct,
so forth, or buildings that might need some additional work. Okay, great.
Correct.
That's all I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander.
Let me just elaborate just a little bit.
Yes.
The one-time money, or the money that we get in the capital budget, increases our upper limit, and that's what the Assembly looks at and approves as that upper limit. We, as a management measure, deal with items and try not to lock ourselves into ongoing recurring costs. So that's why we choose, if it's money that's not earmarked for some particular purpose, that we choose to expend those funds on non-recurring items. It's a management effort on our part.
Ms. Osiander.
I just wanted to get everybody on the same page here, and that is that we are approving the dollar amount of property taxes. We are also approving the size of the total budget. So if there is an additional supplementary appropriation that comes in, you would have to come back to us to ask for approval to increase the size of the budget.
That's correct.
At that time, if there's any questions or debate, that would be the appropriate forum for that.
Correct. And if the bonds pass, when the bonds pass on the 1st, we will be back with that also, when we pass the bonds.
All right. Here we go. Ms. Selcraig and Mr. Starr. Ms. Selcraig.
I appreciated the work session. I appreciated the information you provided and also the help from Ms. Johnson in terms of packaging things for us. And one of the things that I thought was particularly important, and I think it would be valuable for the public to understand, is what is the average cost per student? I don't have that in front of me.
It was, when you include all four funds, it's about $15,000 per student when you include the debt service, the food service, and the local, state, and federal grants funds, as well as the general fund.
And how much does it cost to educate one special need child? What's the average?
An intensive need, I have to be very clear.
Yes,
these are the most significant disabled students, roughly $81,000.
So that $15,000 incorporates those students, it incorporates all students.
Correct.
I just think that when you realize the breadth of what we're doing with the money that we have, how many intensive special needs students?
We're projecting 832 next year, up from 680.
And you indicated it's a growing number, partly because of critical issues in the state that are kind of moving into our community.
That's correct.
I just think when the public realizes how much it costs per child, and that we've actually figured out a way to educate somebody for 9 months for $15,000, an average amount, I think that's a real statement to a good, solid budget. So I thought it was important to put on the record. Thank you.
Realize also that figure includes other funds, debt service fund and nutrition, which is a federal program, which is reimbursement or paid for by the kids themselves. So that's just to take the budget and divide by the number of kids kind of factor, and it does not take into consideration some of these other things.
Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, thank you through the chair. It may be premature, I guess, to talk about this, but when you were having the opportunities to address Juneau about the supplemental opportunities for additional funding, were they specific, or were they just sort of what I hear is a little bit of statement that you have an additional sort of, if we get more money, this is also what we could do. You said it from your staff. Did you communicate those requests to Juneau to say, hey, guys, work with us because we need this?
Yes, when we were in Juneau in February, and we went down, we brought them the prioritized capital request list from the schools, and those had all been reviewed through our capital request committee, and we took those and gave those all to them, as well as the governor's staff. And then we also took copies of our enhancement list that had been rolled out during the budget process, the 2 days of public, presentations by our staff, and then we discussed them further during our presentation. We gave them copies of that. But those are all instruction, most of them. Some of them were one-time. Most of them were things we could do to enhance our instructional program on an ongoing basis. And so that's when we were really pitching the governor's proposed budget at $200 per student on the base. When it became very clear over that weekend and subsequent to that that was not going to be what the budget figure was, that it was going to be the 100 with a potential for some one-time money in the capital budget. We've still given them all that, but we will have to make a serious judgment call based on what the criteria are. If they're putting any restrictions on the money, if it's specifically for energy, then we will look at that. If it's more broad, but it still will need to be one time.
I understand. I guess it's probably going to miss the opportunity because the mill rate will be set and that'll be done to where our appropriation in excess funds is to reduce property taxes. We sort of earmark it for that.
We don't get revenue sharing. We have debt reimbursement, which is a huge, important benefit to this community, and we're working hard to get that extended.
Well, again, one who reviewed the city budgets as well, your data is very clear, so I appreciate the packet. It's very thick, and I read most of it, so thank you for coming down, too.
Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I just, as we discussed in the work session, the concern I hear from constituents is, we basically have had a year-over-year decline in enrollment from 2002 at almost 50,000 projected next year, I think around 47,500, which is, I don't know, I'm trying to do the math. It's, it's at 5%. Yeah, 2,500 reduction, and I think we just need to make sure that we're, that we can, convince our constituents and our taxpayers, and that we're doing everything we can to operate efficiently, kind of across the board. I know there's some initiatives that way, and that said, I think you're operating a great program, and I think the kids in Anchorage are getting a great education, and keep up the good work.
I appreciate that, and I do know that in our budget basis book and in Ms. Frasca's report, those reasons, at least from our perspective, were delineated, so I think that should help you when you're having to answer those questions. And
I did make a request through the chair that the Frasca report, the questions and answers, that gets posted on the, at least either on the school district website or on the... It's going to be on ours if it isn't already. Yes, we agree. And the Education Workforce Advisory Commission report also. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else in the queue. The one thing, that means it's my turn. The one thing that struck me in the discussion on Friday was the fact that to varying levels of, severe to not so severe, 1 out of 7 kids is special needs in our school district. Mm-hmm. And that's 7,000 kids, 8,000 kids out of... About 9,000. 9,000. That just struck me as, that's a lot of kids. And I don't fully understand it, but it was the one thing that stood out, and I don't know. That's something that over time I'd like to learn more about, because it seems, I don't know how that happens, but that's an awful lot of kids that are special needs. So, Mr. Sullivan, your turn.
Yes, thank you. And again, you have good work session on Friday. Appreciated the question and answers and all the information. The workforce development effort, I think, is certainly a timely one, maybe even behind the curve a little bit. How are we doing at King Career Center enrollment-wise? I think you and I had a conversation on radio about 4 years ago where I said we need another King Career Center, and at the time we weren't in agreement on that. But, are we to the point now where to truly train people to be employable, given that quite a few of them don't want to go on to college. I mean, do we need another King Career Center in this town?
I believe so. It's in our, the idea of a study looking at that is in our 10-year CIP. But also, King Career Center is totally maxed out. We have added a third shift after school for kids who want to participate in that, and that's for 9th through 12th graders. We've also added a summer school component, which is, both of those are filled up and long waiting lists. We're also, as you know, I think, in partnership with Alaska Works and AGC and the home builders with our Alaska Works partnership, so underemployed adults, 18 to 25 or so, are able to take basic construction trades in the evenings and on Saturday at the Career Center. So that facility is totally maxed out, and I do think that's one of the things we are going to have to engage the community in, is the ability to add another workforce development site of some kind.
Yeah, I would agree. We also talked a little bit about, at the work session, about the structure of the district, and you guys had mentioned that periodically you have the opportunity to travel to conferences and do some, I guess, introspection of how we are established as a district. And I think, as Mr. Trainee pointed out at the meeting, we're one of the largest school districts, which by itself, I guess, kind of just raises a question in mind. Why are we one of the largest school districts? Is there a benefit or a lack of benefit being so big? And I guess if we had a really detailed cost-benefit analysis of being this big a district.
Well, we're the 88th largest district. We're a municipal school district. We're the municipality of Anchorage, the whole school district. And I think it's a good idea to have the municipality have one school district. It certainly would cut down on your administrative costs, I can assure you, rather than have, like in a lot of Arizona and other places where they have very small districts, everyone has a superintendent, everyone has school boards, everyone has administrative structures. And besides that, the mobility in the municipality is significant. And if students were moving around district to district, if you would, going from one school district to the next, in this community, and we have a very high mobility rate in various parts of town, I think that would be a negative towards the educational progress of students. We are big, but I think that we work very hard to get out into the community. I know because the board is all elected area-wide, they take that very seriously, that they represent all the students, not just some of the students. And I know I take it seriously, and I've been in all the schools numerous times over the years, and I know my staff has done the same. So I think we really are, we can always do better, but I think that we're very responsive for a district the size that we are.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree with that, especially when you got like you say, one municipality. We're not going to be expanding any bigger because we're surrounded by mountains and ocean and all that kind of stuff, so we're trapped in our bowl here. I guess I was asking just more, I think you'd mentioned at one time that there was a study done that looked at the structure of the district, and that there were some recommendations that were good recommendations that you implemented. And we talked a little bit about Finland, and I think you and I volunteered to travel to Finland to study why.
Sounds like a good field
trip.
They're the
number one. They're the leader in the world in education now. They're producing the finest students if you go by test scores and that kind of stuff. And it's just, I know in business, if I see a business that's doing something incredible, and I'm going, what are they doing so well that I should be doing because I'm not doing as well? I guess it'd be worth it to do that analysis. What are they doing? Are there things that we could implement? Does our structure prevent us from doing those kind of implementations, or our government system, or whatever? And I guess I would just encourage the district to find out what the best are doing, and can we emulate it?
Well, and we're not adverse to that. In fact, the Council of Great City Schools, which we're a member of, is doing benchmarking against a lot of the support service functions right now, and they're really analyzing all the costs of all the urban districts and things like transportation, purchasing, safety, security, those kinds of things. And so we really are trying to look at where best practices are and trying to see if some of those can be replicated. But it's an ongoing effort, and we are always, the board and I and our staff are always open to suggestions, and we can look into some things because we can always learn from others.
Like I said, I'll make the travel arrangements.
Just let me know.
Okay.
I also have been on the board of directors of the Alaska Association of School Boards, and we would love to have smaller schools. But there is some economies of scale by having the larger schools. And we have taken measures to try to get the advantages of both small and large by implementing in our high schools these smaller learning communities. The teachers and the kids get to know each other, and so there's things we can do within the larger framework, still get the economies of scale of the larger schools, but also get to know the kids and try to make them feel a part of it and not get lost. I might also mention that our superintendent is a internationally known person. She was the former president of the Great City Schools, Council of Great City Schools. She is well known. As we go out and we visit and go to these forums, we present at a lot of these forums the ideas and the things that we're doing in the district, and we find that we are often on the cutting edge. So Anchorage School District is doing a great job.
Mr. Trainey.
Carol, thanks for bringing this great budget again. I remember when we did this years ago, this place would be filled with people demanding the school district's blood in various forms. This came to public not that long ago, and we have not had any emails, any complaints. It's the job that you guys do when you take it out to the public that makes what we do very easy. So thank you for the parents, grandparents, and the kids in this town, Carol. You do a great job.
Please vote yes on school bonds.
Not to mention the pool bond. We want that one.
Hold it. You're not done yet. Ms. Selcraig?
I was going to make this comment later after we close the hearing, but I thought I might want to give you an opportunity to comment. This is my first year up here, and I've sat through our budget process, and now I'm sitting through your budget process with you. And one of the things we've spent a lot of time on, and we spent a lot of time on our budget process, is looking at wages. And it was interesting to me that in our budget process, we had some people who got 25% in raises, some people got 15, some people got 10, some people got 4, some people got 3. You know, and it just depended on the group and the structure. And I'm looking at what we're going to be doing in the school district, and I applaud you for the hard work and the negotiation for the raises that are coming forward and the increases. But one of the observations, and I welcome your comment, is it seems to me as a society we have this growing disparity going on between people of wealth and people who are not of wealth. And when I look at the increases, I can't help but notice, and this is just an observation, that the Anchorage Education Association has got a 3% and a 4% raise, in 07 and 09, and then another 4% raise. And then as we move down through it, we get, things vary, and I guess the one that caught my eye is the custodians get a 1.6 and a let's see, it's a 1.65 and a 1.6. Anyhow, the disparity is kind of built into the system, and I don't think it's a problem that you did a good job negotiating. But I think this is a thought, and that is that as public bodies, how important it is that we think about this equity in terms of the people who are working for us, and the reality that we're looking. I think I checked today. We've got it's a 2.2 increase, just inflation last year in Anchorage, and the year before it was 3.2, and trying to figure out how we can make sure all of our employees are at least benefiting from increases that keep up with inflation, so that we don't really have a population, or at least a sector in our population, that's continually falling behind. And I'm not bringing this forward to criticize you for doing a good job negotiating, but I think as a body it's something to think about, and to begin to think about ways of structuring our increases so that we don't have very, very large ones, and you don't particularly have that, but we did. And then these very, very small ones, resulting in some sectors of our population not even keeping up but falling further behind. So if you've got a thought on that, I would welcome it. I was going to say this later, but this gives you an opportunity to say something back.
Well, I don't disagree at all with the growing disparity in this community and also the country, but I think that when you look at the total package, the benefits and the salary increases, as well as the competition with the market in some of those jobs, and it's not in any way demeaning the work they do. They're wonderful employees. They really, really are the eyes and ears of our district, especially in the evenings when they're monitoring our facilities. But we've had good relations with those unions. We work hard on the working conditions to make them so that they stay and that they're loyal employees, which they are. So I appreciate your thoughts, and we're constantly looking to balance what our budget constraints are, where our primary has to go into the classroom. We believe that so strongly, and so it's a balancing act.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no one else in the queue.
I have to say something on this particular issue, too. We have 8 bargaining units, and I know you guys have a lot of bargaining units as well. And when you're bargaining, there's a lot of things to bargain for, and they may have different priorities within the different bargaining groups. So just looking at the percent increase is not necessarily a valid measure of where we are, but we do have to be competitive. Our bus drivers have to compete with municipal bus drivers in terms of costs, and so we have to look at those things.
Thank you. Thank you both.
You're welcome. And I'd like to say one thing. When your task force on the parks and the dogs, please don't forget school grounds, because all these people sitting behind me, I'm sure some of the principals here could tell stories of what they have to deal with on school grounds, especially on Mondays after the weekend. So that's just a thing to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Como. I'm glad you were here on both of those. Next time you can testify on the issue when it's in front of us. Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else wishing to testify, please come down. Good evening.
Good evening. Chair Coffey, your microphone is broken.
Well, it's like
just the
many
tip.
things.
There we go. Thank you. Chair Coffey, members of the Assembly, my name is Jim Lepley, and I'm the president-elect of the Anchorage Education Association. President Ron Fuhr found out just today that he would have to miss tonight's important hearing, so I am here in his stead as his very, very, very last-minute replacement. On behalf of AEA's 3,500 members, I want to thank you for your continued support of K-12 funding for the children of Anchorage. Your longtime funding for schools is much appreciated by parents, educators, and the entire community. I am here tonight to urge your approval of the ASD budget as it is presented. Never before has the school community been able to come before the Assembly for our budget hearing in the position we enjoy tonight. As you know, House Bill 273 sits before the governor for her approval. It ensures early and forward school funding. The bill reflects the excellent work done by the Joint Legislative Education Funding Task Force. I think most of us were disappointed that the task force recommended only $100 added to the base student allocation. Governor Palin, to her credit, wanted to add $200, but the ASD built its budget around that $100 figure. So we are here tonight asking your approval of an ASD budget that's not all that we wanted, but we are looking forward to the stability of future funding. AEA worked with the district in compiling parts of the budget document, and it addresses the district's basic needs. The legislature has stepped up to the plate and done its part for Anchorage schools. Now it's the Assembly's turn to act. With this budget, the teachers and other educators will be able to continue providing the high-quality education that the children of Anchorage need and deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have 2 in the queue, Mr. Sullivan, then Ms. Osiander.
Yes,
Dan?
thank you. Appreciate your coming down tonight. My wife received an email, she's a teacher, from AEA yesterday or the day before, and it said, all teachers, you better get down to the Assembly chambers because for the past 2 years they have not funded us to the tax cap, and this year we're going to make a difference. And of course, that's not correct. How did that go out?
How did that email go out?
Yeah, I mean,
I am not certain of that. Superintendent Como would probably be able to answer that one.
No, it came from AEA. It wasn't from Superintendent Como.
I'm sorry. It came from AEA?
It came from you guys. She wrote him back and said, well, that's not correct, and apparently a correction went out, but it just seemed like it was a pretty blatant message to be sending out there, a wrong message, which I found bothersome.
Yeah, that's right. There was a correction sent out.
Well,
how?
I mean, it just
through the district email.
No, I know how it went out, but I mean, I'm not understanding with this body and with this administration, we've fully funded education to the tax cap, I think since the mayor's been on board, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't understand how that level of false information could have got out there.
I'm the president-elect. Please keep that in mind.
I can see why Mr. Fair didn't make it tonight. Yeah. He knew I had this question waiting for him.
And I guess we would say we're all human. Somebody made a mistake, yes.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I just it was an alarmist kind of message, and I don't like those. It's
okay.
Stick with the facts, and but I appreciate your coming, and
okay.
I guess we know why you were sent now. So.
Thank you. And I'd like to say that whole Finland trip thing, that sounded pretty good to me too.
Okay, Ms. Osiander.
You said something that really caught my ears. You said that AEA participated in the budget hearings. Is that correct? That's really cool if that's true. Is it?
As I understand, it is. Again, I'm the president-elect. This is... Help me, Carol.
This is very different than last year. I hope you're all watching from last year. Yes, they were at the hearings, and also they worked very carefully with elementary ed in developing the proposal on the other half hour on the planning time with the new PE teachers that are coming on. But they did participate. They came to the hearings and they participated.
I'm not surprised they were on the planning time issue at all. But if you guys are participating in the budget preparation and budget hearings, I applaud you. I absolutely applaud you. That was a problem it was a sorely lacking presence some years ago. And so, super, keep it up. Great news. Thank you.
Now that you have your game plan for the next year, that
I
you're
know.
president-elect.
I may withdraw my candidacy if I can.
I have no one else in the queue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down. Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Coffey and members of the Assembly, my name is Michael Graham. I'm the principal at East High School. I'm also president of the Anchorage Principals Association, a group of 141 dedicated instructional leaders from elementary, middle level, and high school schools across the city, many of which are here this evening. I'm here on behalf of APA requesting you support the school board's budget as presented. I don't know that there's a single principal in Anchorage who will tell you that they love this district budget as proposed. However, when it comes to helping all students learn and achieve success, we see the needs, and we know that there are more programs we would like to implement or expand. It's no surprise to you, every one of us would like to see more funding available for our particular schools and programs. However, we believe that the budget as presented to you is responsible. As principals, we've worked with our executive directors in the various divisions to set priorities and to give input. Our executive directors, of course, work closely with the superintendent, who then presented the budget plan to the school board, who in turn have spent a great deal of time scrutinizing it, taking input from the public, and who are now submitting this final plan to you. Like the Assembly, the Anchorage School Board consists of elected officials who represent the voters of Anchorage. They understand the importance of balancing the needs of students and schools while at the same time being responsible to taxpayers. You are, of course, aware of all this, but I want to make the point that there's been a long and exhaustive process to bring this budget to you. As principals, we are now ready to move forward with planning the instruction of programs for our schools this next year. Taking my hat off as a principal, I'm also the father of 4 daughters, one in elementary, one in middle school, one in high school, and one now in college. To date, they've all received or are receiving an outstanding education in the Anchorage School District. I'm thankful that I live in a city with a public education system that's willing to meet the needs of all students. I'm thankful I live in a city in which there are educational options available within our own school system. I'm thankful I live in a city in which one does not need to enroll in private schools in order to receive a top-notch education. And finally, I am thankful that I work for a district and to be part of an association that is dedicated to continuing this reality. The Anchorage Principals Association strongly urges you to publicly endorse the work of the school board, send a message to the citizens in Anchorage that public education in Anchorage is still a top priority, and help us continue meeting the needs of all of our students by approving the district's budget as proposed.
Thank you. Thank you. I have no one in the queue. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bonnie Paskvan. I'm a parent of a kindergartner and a second grader at the Turnagain Elementary's Russian Immersion Program. I'm also Vice President of the Russian Parent Association and Chairman of the Turnagain PTA Legislative Affairs Committee. I come as a parent to you tonight to ask you to approve the school district's budget as presented. I was particularly happy to see that there's an approximately $2 million increase for new computers for schools. Turnagain is one of the older schools that has not been the recipient of any remodeling, and we only have 20 fully functioning computers available for use for our 404 students. The district average is 2 for 1, so we're wildly under-resourced at Turnagain. I'm asking that you please invest more in computers on a go-forward basis, and I see in the budget recommendation that it become a standard budgetary item from year to year, and I hope that the school district and the community will support that. I'm also very pleased to see the increases in the base student allocation and the funding for special education. Thank you very much.
No one in the queue. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne Moran, and I'm the president of the Anchorage Council of Education, part of Alaska Public Employees Association. We represent 425 members of the Anchorage School District. And I really strongly encourage passage of the ASD budget as proposed. I know of no other public organization that undertakes such a concerted effort, to have public input regarding the school budget process. And while there's no shortage of ideas of how district funds, should be spent, there is a very transparent process that has to make the tough choices for those competing demands. And I do want to, since Assemblyperson Selkrig brought up the issue of, I guess, the disparity between the municipal budget and the school district budget as far as for raises. One of the issues I think as a community and as a state that we have to face is on the idea of public service and where on the retirement, that on the PERS and TERS, that there has been that change from defined benefit, which has allowed a number of people to have financial security, particularly for the middle class. That has gone away now, and you will see people having that defined contribution. There'll be a greater demands for raises and increases because they're having to fund their own retirement system. That is going to be a very large issue, going forward. And I realize that you cannot make those decisions, but I assure you, I have been down in Juneau, personally testifying, making forth that effort, because it will be affecting, your budget just like the school district's budget into the future. So any support that you can give and input to, our state legislature would be greatly appreciated. And I thank you for this opportunity for the public discourse.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander has a question.
Well, first off, we have been doing that, Mr. Moran, and we'll continue to. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, if you could consider participating in the school district's budget hearings and budget preparation processes. I just learned that AEA did last year. I would urge you.
Yes, I have, personally participated in a number of the school budget review committees, both in my supervisory position and also, as the ACE president, too. Thank you.
Ms. Selkrig.
I appreciate your comments regarding PERS, TERS, and retirement, and I think that we've heard not just at the school district, but across the board it's a critical issue in terms of retaining people, and it's very hard to get good people here, pay them pretty well, and not give them a kind of an avenue for retirement when there are other places that may be offering that. And so I think we are working as a body to address those issues, and we will, of course, want to work with you on that. Thanks.
Thank you. There's no one else in the queue. I will say one thing. The issue between defined benefit plan and defined contribution plan is one of expenses. We're paying a very, very steep price for a long-term defined benefit plan right now. It's in the order of magnitude of tens of millions of dollars, $7 billion across the state. I don't know whether one is better than the other, but what we've had has not been inexpensive in any regard. And whether or not, what I've also learned is that in virtually every private sector business, we have moved away from the defined benefit to the defined contribution plan because of the horrendous cost associated with it. In fact, it's driven many companies into bankruptcy. So it's not an easy answer, but that's the other side of the coin.
If I can respond to that a little bit. The actuarial reports between the TERS, Tier 2 and the PERS Tier 3 versus the current cost for PERS Tier 4 and, TERS Tier 3 is very close, if not the same. I believe that TERS is actually a little bit less expensive and PERS just slightly higher. That shortfall, that billions of dollars, that future cost is really based on projections, and some of that is that so as a society we had very large health care costs, and we had the earlier retirement, so that's where a lot of those costs, and the poor job of the actuary is not updating their death tables. People live longer, so they were there to collect that money. So what I'm proposing is that how it is set up today is pretty close to cost. But where I see the concern when trying to compete against public sector versus private sector, I spent the majority of my career in the private sector. I'm very familiar with 401ks, and we also have something called profit sharing. And that's something that in the public sector we should not really have that opportunity. I think there's some folks that are down in, I believe it's in Oregon, at the federal expense now, taking some time with that. So there are things you can do in the private sector that you can't do in the public sector. And that's where we do not want to become the training ground for other organizations, since we will start out and they'll say, oh, great, we can give more money now, we get profit sharing, we can stock options, you can do a great deal of more creative ways to help compensate people than you can in the public sector. So.
As I indicated, it's a complex and difficult problem, but
I
to
totally
suggest
agree.
that there's one solution is probably short-sighted. Mr. Starr?
Well, as one is in the private sector, and I don't know if this is merit or not, but yesterday my family and probably all the subscribers to Blue Cross and Blue Shield received a 25% increase in their health care costs. So, in that regard, what will happen is that those employers and employees will start to talk, and, the private sector has its challenges. So, just face that. It's numbers that we see on both sides, as Mr. Coffey's illustrated here, but 25% is going to hit my family for probably $3,000. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, why the community, as a community, why the school district budget goes up, because, as an employee, they have health care. Our health care costs are being passed on to here, too, so I totally agree with that. So the gentleman I met for lunch today at the Alaska Club, his premium went up 44%. I'm surprised he didn't have a heart attack when he had that, news. So.
All right, we have Ms. Selkirk and Ms. Klayman. Apparently we've generated some further interest. Ms. Selkirk.
Well, and I want to concur with you that I agree that this is complicated, and I think that we can't go back to a PERS 1 reality. Yeah, I mean that was, it just cost too much. It was another time and another era. And I really think the issue here is bigger than Anchorage. It's an issue that's being experienced across the country. I went from owning my own company and paying an exorbitant amount of health insurance to working for the university and not making nearly as much money, but I have a good health program. So, I mean, it is this complex situation we're in, and I think that it's going to take working together on it. But I think it's something that we have to recognize, and I don't think that the Tier 4 has solved it. I think that there is still work to do, and I look forward to all of us putting our heads together and trying to figure it out.
Mr. Klayman, putting your head together.
And I will try to be brief.
Thank you.
The topic of employee benefits is a national and a local issue, and the benefits go a large part to employee longevity, but at the same time, it also raises this huge national question, which is how are we caring for our senior citizens? And how do we provide funds for that, and how do we get there from where we are today? There's a lot of discussion, and I'm not going to be the one to claim I have a solution to any of it, but I think it's an important discussion to have, and we all need to recognize that any one of these plans comes with costs and benefits, and they all have a lot to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Can I have a button push? Mr. Traney moved to approve. Mr. Klayman seconded. Thank you very much. Mr. Traney.
You know, I've sat through a lot of these. Like I was telling Carol earlier, I remember back in 91, 92 time frame when this place would be filled with people that didn't understand what the school district was trying to do but didn't want their budget approved because they didn't like it. Carol has gone, with the school board, has gone out of the way to make sure everybody understands the value of public education. He's done a great job. I know as a grandparent, I was going door to door with this campaign. Stopped at one house and they said, I don't have any kids and I don't really care. I don't like having to pay it. But, you know, we all have grandchildren. I think I've got 4 in the district and more coming. So, a lot more coming. So it really doesn't matter at what level we have kids or grandkids. We need to support public education because the reverse side is unacceptable. So I'm going to support this budget, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Anyone at all? All right. Well, I'll ask again. Is there objection to the approval of this budget? I'm now seeking unanimous consent to avoid a roll call. If there's any objection, you need to speak up. Otherwise, I'm going to have the record reflect unanimous consent to this budget. Seeing and hearing no one, this matter is approved by unanimous consent. The school district budget's approved. All right, thank you very much. We're now on item 13B, public hearing on site plan authority. I'm sorry. What did I say? I said 13B, I mean 14B. We're going to take a minute to allow the room to clear since I'm sure all of you here aren't on site plan review. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I'm going to let the room clear. Hi. Yes. Now, wait a sec. This is in the middle of a meeting. Hi. Yeah, 1 year. I know, you missed it. We got send me an email, I'll send it back to you. Guys, I'm sorry. What are you here on? Oh, from the government stuff. Okay. Right over here. Oh, well, hell, I'm sorry. Signed on the wrong line. Yeah, okay. You got one? Good. Thank you. It's been a while since you've been here. Anna was chair. That's a couple years ago. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to come back to order in a minute. I'm going to. Oh, I'd like to introduce Scout Troop 267 to the Assembly and the public who are remaining. The Scoutmaster is Chad Cotter. And I'm going to get there. Give me a second. Come on down. Have the boys and the Scoutmasters and the assistants introduce yourselves, and maybe somebody has a question. So come on down. I'm glad to see you tonight. Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Coffey.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm a Scoutmaster of Troop 267. We came down here tonight to work towards one of our requirements on a merit badge.
Good. And the assistants with you are?
We've got Assistant Scoutmaster Merlin Parrott, Assistant John Thornton, and this is our patrol leader, Cortland Parrott.
Good. Good evening. Why don't you all come up and introduce yourselves and tell us what you're working on. Come on down.
I'm Cortland Parrott, and we're working on our citizenship in the community merit badge tonight.
Good. Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Christian Thomas, and I'm working on the citizenship in the community merit badge.
Don't be shy, gentlemen.
My name is Levi Musgrave, and I'm working on the citizenship in the community merit badge.
I'm Patrick Thornton, and I'm working on the citizenship of the nation merit badge.
My name is Alan Cole, and I'm working on the citizenship in the community merit badge.
Good, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We appreciate you showing up.
Thank you very much. It's been a very educational process, so we're glad to introduce
you showed up on a
these.
good night. I mean, the school district budget and that's and the dogs in parks and the settlement of that. I hope you heard it all.
Well, we heard a lot, and we apologize. We're going to have to leave now, but we appreciate the show.
Yeah, it's late. I think some of us wish we could go with you now. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, we're on now to 14B, AO 2008-115, Site Plan Authority to UDC. Public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Okay, before I close the public hearing, Ms. Osiander.
This is a matter that was originally referred to the Title 21 committee. We have not had time to take it up yet. I would like then to postpone it so we do have time, and I'm asking that it be postponed till May 6th.
And that's postpone the public hearing.
Well, I think we need to continue the public hearing because...
Same thing, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at here.
You got at it.
Second.
Second. Is there objection? Seeing and hearing none, that matter is postponed till May 6th. And you'll announce when the Title 21 committee is going to handle it, right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. We're now at Ordinance AO 2008-39. That's Parks and Trails Legacy Act. The public hearing on this item, 2008-39, is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve, but it was already pushed by someone.
No, there's no motion pending.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just getting my machine together. Ms. Osiander?
I'm not going to be supporting this, principally because it seems to me that though the goal is laudatory, this particular proposal basically adds a bureaucratic layer that's not really necessary, particularly for the areas outside of the Anchorage Park District. We currently in my district have a park board. We have a specific fund for capital projects. I see no value added by having a system that works just fine, basically going under the control of a foundation that's done great things for Anchorage, but frankly not anything for the parks in my district. I also think that there may be some difficulties. I haven't specifically talked about this with anyone in legal, with having decisions for spending be made by a foundation board when basically those decisions, the desire for the people who donated money for a particular project may not necessarily be followed through. And I think that the Assembly and working with the Park Department is perfectly adequate to make decisions. So at this time, I think this is premature. I would much prefer to work towards emulating something in the bowl along the lines that has worked so successfully for us in Chugiak Eagle River, and that is to create a separate dedicated voter-approved fund for capital and major maintenance projects.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander. Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, Dylan.
Mr. Dillon.
Did you take a look at this thing, and what do you think about it? I know it went to your Parks and Rec Commission.
Through the chair, Senator Trainee, yes, we have taken a very hard look. The Anchorage Parks Bowl Commission has approved this unanimously, both in its concept and its inception.
To administration, do you agree this should be put into law?
We do support this ordinance, and we think it's gone through a lot of work and through the committee process of the commission, and so we are very supportive of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston.
Yes, I also at first thought that this was an interesting concept, and I am very supportive of Eagle River and Girdwood as far as the assessing themselves for their park and recreational service, and I would like at some point to see the Anchorage service area consider that. I am concerned, even though I was enthralled with the idea of having the Anchorage Park Foundation receiving the funds, because I know that the Anchorage Park Foundations can sometimes get 3 times the productivity out of their funds than that we maybe can get out of the municipality just by being a private foundation. But I also understand that the Anchorage Park Foundation is not nonprofit on its own. It's a part of the Community Foundation, and it's a managed fund. And my understanding is that as a managed fund, that Parks and the Park Foundation makes a request for expenditures or suggests expenditures, but it's actually the Community Foundation that is responsible for those expenditures. And I think we have sort of a mix and match of funds there with public and private, and I don't think that it serves the public process as well. Even though I'm enthralled with the idea, I could not support this idea because we are a public entity, and I think we should follow the public process.
Mr. Klayman.
First, I know that Mr. Teshi is the person that put this ordinance together, and I'm not sure, is he still on the line with us?
Last we heard, he was
snoring.
So
he doesn't seem to be responding.
Is he there? We don't hear anything.
All right.
Mr. Teshi?
Yes. Oh, he's there. All right, go ahead, Mr. Klayman.
Mr. Teshi, the last time that this was before us, I had the understanding that you were going to potentially have some discussions with Ms. Osiander to see whether there may be some sort of an S version to this that would satisfy some of her concerns, and I'm wondering if you've had time to work on that.
Yes, the version before the Assembly tonight is about as complete a version as we can come up with that makes it clear that the ordinance protects the historic rights of service areas to keep their funds separate, to have a separate accounting for monies received and expended, and at the same time to give all service areas, including Eagle River and Anchorage, the benefits of this new approach to funding for parks maintenance.
Mr. Klayman?
Okay, I think that it doesn't sound like that you've had an opportunity to sit down and talk with Ms. Osiander about some of her concerns as to whether there might be some modifications that would make it an acceptable proposal to her.
Mr. Chairman, I would add that perhaps the Department of Law would like to weigh in on this because specifically the version before the Assembly tonight was drafted specifically with the intent to respect the various prerogatives of the service areas, and perhaps Mr. Reeves would like to reiterate or weigh in on that, but that was the entire intent of this version before the Assembly.
That's appropriate, but I'm going to go through the order, and I'll come back to you, and you can ask him that. I have Ms. Selk. You done, Mr. Klayman?
I would just note that at this point, I'll wait until after the discussion's ended, but I would just I anticipate making a motion to continue the deliberation on this to another meeting, because I would like to have an opportunity to see if we might be able to come up with a compromise.
Ms. Selkrig?
Actually, I was going to ask the Department of Law to actually comment on this ordinance in terms of the securing the kind of independence of Eagle River in terms of allocating their own resources.
Go ahead.
Department of Law. Ms. Selkrig, through the chair. It is true, as Mr. Teshi stated, that at his request, we redrafted this with the specific objective of making it absolutely certain that no money could go into the legacy fund unless it were done with the appropriate approvals by the service area boards where applicable and by the Assembly. And so I'm comfortable that it does, in fact, ensure that that is the case. Once it's in the legacy fund, the way this ordinance is drafted, there would be sub-accounts that would ensure that money that came from one of the specific sources, such as Eagle River or Girdwood, for example, would be segregated from any other money. Now, the only footnote to that is that private individuals who wanted to add to that money could through their wills, for example, or just charitable giving, could contribute additional money that would also go into one of those sub-accounts. So the money could grow within a sub-account, but remaining under the control of the assembly and the service area. Now, the rub comes when we discuss the mechanics of getting the money back out of the fund, and the reason that that is somewhat complicated, and I think Ms. Osiander has nailed it, she got it right, that this is a private entity, this fund. It exists within a foundation, and the foundation does what the foundation is legally permitted to do under the law with its own assets. It would function as what they refer to as a donor-advised fund within the foundation, and if the foundation follows its charter, the foundation would disperse that money only upon request of the donor, which is you. So long as the foundation operates the way it's supposed to operate under federal law, there would be an assurance that the money would be segregated, and it would be returned, and it would remain under the control of the assembly and the appropriate service area boards.
So I guess I'm a little confused about the rub then. I guess I need some clarification of, well, I guess from Ms. Osiander, what I'm not understanding is if, in fact, if it's a foundation following its charter and its charter is designed to ensure that those sub-boards actually have control of those accounts in terms of advising allocations, I don't understand what the concern is. Could you expand upon that for me? Maybe I just didn't hear it correctly.
Well, I have a number of concerns. One is it's totally unnecessary. We are doing just fine managing the funds for parks in Eagle River Chugach. Why do they need to be under the control of the Anchorage Park Foundation? I don't see any value to that except another layer of bureaucracy. I really don't.
But what that does do, it provides you the opportunity to have those funds leveraged with donations from other entities, which is the intent of the foundation, is to expand those funds through donations from the Rasmussen Foundation and other good partners that have been willing to work with that organization. So what you'd be doing is you'd be depriving Eagle River, and actually, if we don't pass this, other opportunities to partner. And I know I've spoken with Rasmussen Foundation, and they are very impatient with a lot of entities, but they do like working with the foundation. They have found it to be a good, a good entity in terms of their dollars and their impact. So it's true that it may require a little bit more bureaucracy, but there's the potential for substantially increasing the resources that are available for the parks. And do you not see a benefit in that, Ms. Osiander?
No, I don't support this.
Okay. Mr. Starr, Ms. Johnston, then Mr. Teshi. Mr. Starr.
Well, again, our job is to represent all of Anchorage, and so I'll speak to as much of that as I also can. But I also want to make sure that you know that we think that it's running great, and the service area board thinks it's running great. They actually took a vote and said they don't want to be included in this fund. And so some of the responsibility I have and Debbie has is to honor those service area opinions, and they fleshed it out pretty good. I try to stay away from the service boards so that we don't look like we're influencing them. But there's also a perception that it could do damage to our ability to run our parks if we have sort of a third entity. And I look at this as generational, people willing their monies and putting things into play. And we saw, maybe not directly related to the same arguments, but when the naming of the town square and the Ruth Moulton things, you started to see history and drama occur that put at odds goodwill. And there's a lot of that generational stuff that's going to happen in our parks area as well. But it also perhaps bears a step back from how we do it. And I know Mr. Rod is out there. I'm not going to call him up, but we've worked really hard to make sure the capital improvement requirements and the ongoing maintenance requirements are very clear in our community. And that's a separate mill rate discussion. That's a separate meeting. That's a separate time frame on how we set our budgets. And it works really, really well if you adhere to it. And so I just look to that guidance as to how the service area boards address that with the money available to them. And it's worth it to have a primer on how they do it. And it's really remarkable. So I can speak to that from that aspect, but it's also models that perhaps Anchorage should borrow from the districting concept and the leadership. Every one of those board members comes from a community council. They understand their park needs. They understand their basis of folks. And they come together for these Parks and Recs board meeting. And they do a wonderful job. And I think that's the true essence of volunteerism. And it really needs to be brought down to that level for it to be successful. You could say that it works only because of the 35,000 people in our little corridor, but it works because they're so passionate about, at the end of the day, that they do the right thing. So I'm going to respect our service board area and say that they don't want it. I also don't think that this level of oversight is necessary in it from the goodwill and the hard work combination of city employees managing those gifts and dedicated funds into the legacy fund. It just seems to be unnecessary step. So I'll speak to that, but I won't support this at this time.
Ms. Johnston, then Mr. Teshi, then Mr. Klayman. Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I really wish someone was here from the foundation, both the Community Foundation and the Parks Foundation, because I've understood that there's a process, and I could be wrong about this, but I understood that with the Parks Foundation, that the Park Foundation makes a request or an advisory vote for expenditures to the Community Foundation, but it's actually the Community Foundation who's ultimately responsible for that expenditure. And that to me is the crux. And when you're talking about Eagle River, I'd also like to include, Mr. Roach and I have Girdwood, which has a similar situation as Eagle River, and I think both are very independent communities, and this would bother them to have to be put into another decision-making process. But backing away from Girdwood, I still, with the Park Foundation, maybe Mr. Dillon, you can tell me exactly, and then when you're doing it, also explain to me what the Community Foundation does with that expenditure.
Mr. Dillon, in response to Ms. Johnston.
Through the chair, Assemblymember Johnston, the Anchorage Park Foundation is an umbrella under the 501c3 of the Alaska Community Foundation. This is a federal income tax structure that's set up, and indeed, as Mr. Reeves pointed out, the larger board of the Community Foundation is ultimately responsible under full IRS requirements and their charter. Having said that, the Anchorage Park Foundation has a set of bylaws and a set of operating corporations that spells out what their mission is. They have a board of directors that's independent. They annually review proposed projects from the community and make recommendations for those projects to be approved and expenditures. Those then go to the Community Foundation for final approval, as long as the Park Foundation stays within its charter and approves projects that are appropriate to that charter. The Community Foundation would approve funding. So it's a checks and balance, but technically you are ceding authority to the larger Community Foundation to generate the benefits of sharing revenues, sharing income.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Teshi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know that this will be one of the last times that I will be able to address the Assembly on these issues, so let me be very plain and very clear. The ordinance before the Assembly is specifically designed to set up a fund that will provide for the maintenance of parks and park trail facilities throughout Anchorage for generations to come. Now, of course, the devil is in the details, and let's get right down to the objection that Ms. Ostrander and Mr. Starr have raised, and that is some sort of a question as to whether or not this fund that area to operate a completely independent parks recreation service area that is above and beyond any kind of managerial or fiscal control by the municipality of Anchorage. And in that light, if you were to go back and look at the wording of this ordinance, and very, very particularly the sections of the ordinance drafted by the Department of Law respect to the contributions in and the expenditures from funds, it could not be more clear from the wording of this ordinance that no money derived from Eagle River and from that area north of basically the highway separating that community from Anchorage, no money spent or derived from that community or spent in that community spent except the express intent of the service area boards there. The ordinance is absolutely clear that this is completely an optional thing that those boards may consider. Now, Eagle River is extraordinarily proud of its historic, independent operation of service areas for parks and recreation growth. And indeed, for the benefit of its residents, I think has done an excellent job of maintaining those facilities. That being said, though, the ordinance is entirely, and I say the word entirely, optional as to those service areas. If, for instance, those service areas do not wish to participate in this ordinance because it somehow involves the municipality of Anchorage, it somehow involves areas south of Ship Creek, that's fine. Eagle River is free to say, we are not going to be a part of this. We are going to continue to operate in our own way, in our own historic, independent way. That's fine. Eagle River has complete and unfettered options to operate independently. But that being said, that is no reason whatsoever why the representatives of Eagle River, and I'll be very plain about this, why the representatives of Eagle River should vote against the opportunity of Anchorage residents to enact for themselves an ordinance that will pave the way for the creation of a fund that will attract public and private sector contributions for the maintenance of Anchorage Park. Now, if indeed in the future, if Eagle River residents wish to take part of this, they are certainly free to do so, but at their exclusive option. On the other hand, if Eagle River residents, and through the sentiments expressed tonight by Ms. Oskander and Mr. Starr, remain in some fashion worried that because this ordinance involves the Anchorage Parks Foundation or the Anchorage Community Organization, there is nothing to prohibit those organizations whatsoever from asking those two representatives to put together an ordinance that would essentially give them the same right, power, and prerogative to set up a similar kind of organization. So, in that regard, Eagle River has all ways, not both ways, but all ways. They can participate in this organization if they wish, and they can derive benefits from it if they wish. If they do not, they can simply do nothing and be content with what they are doing now, which, by the way, is an entirely good option, at least for the present. Or they can go their own separate route and propose legislation that would essentially create the same thing. So to that extent, frankly, I cannot, in my mind, as a legislative craft, figure out any other way to absolutely and totally protect the prerogatives of Eagle River residents and its two representatives to follow a course that is consistent with the very best wishes of the residents of Eagle River. I don't know what else I can do on this, but please, Ms. Oskander, please, Mr. Starr, do not, by your negative vote, prohibit or deny residents of Anchorage the opportunity to take advantage of a funding mechanism that involves both public and private sector funding to maintain the parks in this community. And, Mr. Chairman, I could not make this any more clear. And I would certainly like to be once again to comment
in light of both several of the comments Mr. Teshi's made, as well as a number of the questions that Ms. Johnson has raised, or Johnston, I apologize, I think that I'm going to ask that we continue this hearing.
Can I ask you to
Actually
hold
schedule-
off for a second, because I have just two more in the queue, Mr. Birch and Ms. Selkirk, and then I'll recognize you to make that motion, if you would be so kind. Thank you. Mr. Birch.
Well, we had nobody has come down to testify on this evening. My sense is that this is an ordinance that's kind of running around looking for a problem that doesn't exist. And I think, I think from the standpoint, I think we've got a good foundation in place. We've got a mechanism in place. We've got people in place that are doing the right thing. I agree with some of the earlier comments about just an additional layer of bureaucracy, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Ms. Selkirk.
I'll withdraw. Thank you.
Mr. Clement, your moment.
At this point, I would move to continue the hearing on this and also ask the chair to schedule a work session so that we can hear both from Eagle River, Girdwood, the Parks Foundation, have these folks actually present and explain. I'd like to actually have a diagram of how this process works. That's my motion.
Now, let me get clarity. The public hearing is closed. You mean continue to deliberate?
Continue deliberations, right.
All right.
That's fine.
Please,
Well, I think that if this is a good idea, it actually is something that we want to have going on for many years. And the level of debate tells me that we are nowhere near consensus about this, and I think there's enough questions that I think we should have those answered before we vote. I think what they're trying to do is figure out a way to work with public funds and combine those with private funds to get the best benefits for Anchorage Parks. Is this the right way to do it? There's questions raised, and I think we should try to answer those before we vote, and I don't think we're getting answers to the satisfaction of this body tonight, and I think the way to do that is have a work session where we have some of the parties that are engaged, where we're not just relying on what Mr. Dillon says, the Parks Foundation. Let's get the Parks Foundation here. Let's hear from the folks from Eagle River. Let's hear from the folks from Girdwood. Let's hear about their concerns, pros and cons, so that when we make our decision, we're well informed.
Ms. Selkirk.
Well, and it's my understanding the way this is structured right now, Eagle River is in it and Girdwood is in it. And what I heard Mr. Teshi just suggest is perhaps revising this so that there was the option for them to be in it. In other words, there was more of a choice rather than an all-inclusive umbrella. And I'm happy to explore that and try to come up with a way where we can at least, create a situation that if the rest of us want to opt into this, that we could do it, because it is an opportunity to leverage our resources. And I would hope that we could figure that out without forcing Eagle River and Girdwood to be in it. And I wanted to respond to Mr. Starr's comment about the structure in Eagle River. And I really think there's some great value in what's going on out there, and there's some great lessons to be learned. So, over time, maybe there's some things we can do in the bowl that bring about that kind of intimacy in terms of park planning, and certainly in terms of my district. And this Russian Jack thing was a real experience that wasn't too positive, but it's evolving, it's getting better. So anyhow, I think we're all working at something here, and postponing this might give us a little chance to refine it so that we can actually make it work for all the entities in the bowl.
Thank
and
you.
Outside of the
Ms.
bowl.
Osiander.
I don't have any questions. I don't see the need to postpone it. I don't support it. The first version was worse. I applaud the work that was done. This came to, as I understand it, our park board twice. The first time was a no, and the second time was, well, okay, but I don't see the real value to us, but we don't necessarily object. That's my understanding of what happened. I'm sure, as in all parts of the community, there's going to be all kinds of opinions in Eagle River, just as there'll be all kinds of opinions in Turnagain. I have read this carefully. I have asked questions about it. I don't support it. I don't see the value purportedly is that this will leverage funds. The inference on that is that we have never received a grant from the Rasmussen Foundation. That is inaccurate. The inference is we have no private donations to our parks and no volunteer participation on our parks. That is inaccurate. I served as a board member of the Eagle River Foundation, which is part of the Anchorage Community Foundation. I know how the foundation works. I don't support this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Mr. Starr.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Teshi's comments on that and the willingness to work, but, I kind of echo Debbie's statements a little bit in that, and there's other comments as well, and they go deep. It's just two things, and no offense to Mr. Teshi, it doesn't seem that this has got enough of the regulatory oversight stuff. You don't address the bylaws of the 501c3 and the operating structure that's supposed to exist well beyond us. And we also want to avoid, in my opinion, on the segmentation or the separation or the secession type of atmosphere that may exist, because our body as a whole in the Anchorage Bowl includes all the way from the Kinnick Bridge there. And so when you start to see this possibility exist, I like the idea, I don't like the mechanism. I think the idea for me that you look at in your winter sports, you have a forum that extends from one end to the other with wonderful Nordic trails, for example. If you're going to leverage funds from some, federal funds or something, they should be equally distributed across the board with a mechanism that works equally across the board. If you do have a Rasmussen grant type of thing, or just a general good-hearted effort from somebody that says, all of our parks are important, I don't want to exclude Girdwood or Eagle River inadvertently. So, the idea, the concept works good. In speaking to Mr. Clayman through the chair, it's again, a work in progress. This one doesn't work in progress for me now. The fact of the matter, with Mr. Teshi reaching his life to sponsor such a mechanism in the future debate, I'd say let's put this one to rest and rework it through all the good ideas that you have with other sponsors and other energy. So in that respect, I'm going to vote no for the extension as well as the main motion.
Mr. Mayor. Then Mr. Teshi. Mr. Mayor, then Mr. Teshi. On the motion to continue or postpone.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would encourage, and I guess I'm going to take Mr. Starr's comments there, that what I've seen from you, Mr. Starr, and other members, especially Ms. Osiander and others, that the ability to engage the individuals that might be affected. I know Ms. Osiander made a comment about the Parks Board out there. I know John Rada's here. He'd be happy to tell you that, your characterization is a little different than what we know as the vote out there was unanimous in support of this ordinance at the Park Board. But it would seem logical that for this body, who has many times postponed items, to gather more information, hear from the people who are affected. I think it would be worthy if you think this issue is worthwhile, and everyone seems to be. I know, Ms. Osiander, you have a different opinion, but others have indicated their interest of the concept, that why not have a work session that involves the Girdwood community and the Eagle River community, people who actually will have to deal with this if you believe there's an effect or no effect to them, and also our own commission, or the Parks Commission. I've never seen this body shy away from more information, and I would encourage you, because the idea of a legacy fund, the goal, and I won't speak for Mr. Teshi, he will do it better, and that is that the idea is to create a system that lasts beyond the personalities that sit around this body or sit in this office that I occupy today, but lasts for generations, and where you get less government control of the funds and get more private sector participation and more flexibility. And Ms. Johnson made some good points about how the foundations work very successfully in leveraging dollars, but also how they utilize their resource to get a bigger bang for the dollar. So I would encourage you, if you think you like the concept, or at least have interest in the concept, that you should postpone it for the purpose of that discussion. The other thing I would, even though Mr. Teshi may not be on this side of the podium, he will be like everyone else on that side of the podium in short order, a couple more weeks, and he will be advocating like everyone else who comes to this body, advocating for issues and interest in legislation, and that shouldn't be the reason because he's leaving the body that now pushed this off and restarted again. He's a citizen like everyone else, so I would encourage you to consider, if you're, again, like the concept, to postpone it for the purpose of bringing the different commissions together and have a discussion of those that will implement this far beyond the political body that sits here today and sits in this office that I occupy today.
Nobody suggested that we're doing that, Mr. Mayor. That's not
Mr.
the
Chairman,
suggestion.
Mr. Chairman,
Teshi?
I'm just giving my opinion, but I
Yeah,
appreciate
okay.
yours.
Chairman.
Mr. Teshi, you have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Is there any specific motion on the floor?
Yes, there is. The motion is to continue this matter until not a date certain. I would assume it's till 15 April, right, Mr. Clayman?
I'm sorry.
Your date, 15 April?
I would be perfectly comfortable putting it into May.
Well, fine. We'll put a date for it so we have
May 6th?
Yeah.
That gives
Okay.
us time for
Mr.
the work
Teshi,
session I'm
there-
requesting.
There's a motion to continue this matter till May 6th.
Has
By
that
Mr.
motion been seconded?
Yes, it's all in front. That's what we've been debating here the last 5 minutes or so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Understanding the procedural context of that motion, again, understanding as well that I am now addressing Anchorage Assembly probably for the last time on this piece of legislation and certainly on any important piece of legislation. I ask indulgence of the body to listen to my words very carefully. I speak from a neighborhood far, far away from Anchorage. And I speak, I think, with a new perspective on what could make Anchorage a great city, what could make Anchorage a city that not only would be competitive with other great cities in the lower 48, but a city that is totally superlative in every aspect. And one of the things that we have in Anchorage that no other city has in the United States is an excellent park system. But one of the things that we do not have, by comparison to so many cities and so many great cities in the lower 48, is an adequate system to maintain our parks and the legacy of these parks for future generations. We have not stages of our development yet devised a way to maintain the crown jewel of this largely undeveloped resource for future generations. And I hope that I'm not putting members of the Assembly to sleep, or I hope I'm not putting members of the Assembly off by these words, because they are not intended to sound partisan, and they are certainly not intended to sound liberal or conservative, but rather for the future, for generations of Anchorage residents. We need to grow up as a city. We need to develop ways of protecting and enhancing these precious natural resources that we have. We are not yet there. The ordinance in front of the Assembly tonight is one way of doing this. Yes, like any piece of legislation, it may be imperfect. It is the very best and the very finest piece of legislation that skilled attorneys in the Department of Law can draft. Don't nitpick this thing. Ms. Ostrander, Mr. Starr, you represent Eagle River, but for the moment, set aside your dedication to those exclusive neighborhoods and think about the good of the community. Think about the good of Anchorage, what you can do for this city to make it a great city. Yes, you can say, well, this is all well and good, it's a good idea, but let's look at bylaws. Let's revise bylaws. And you can wallow in your own differences. You can wallow in your own concerns and struggles and everything else. You can let this great city on the frontier simply disappear, or you can, allow this city to remain a mediocre place. Or you can say, look, this is the kind of ordinance that other cities pass, the kind of thing that is done elsewhere in the country to protect public resources. Because the city can't do these things alone. The public entities can't, maintain parks alone. Parks are bigger. Parks are more important. They belong to the entire community. They belong to everybody in the community. The private institutions, private citizens, everybody else. We've got to work together on these things. Not just the government, not just the municipal assembly, not just the two members from Eagle River, Chugach, protect the parochial interests of their neighborhoods, but it's everybody working together. So, I beg, on behalf of future generations, take this first step. Take this first step and move Anchorage beyond a frontier town on the edge of the wilderness into a town of greatness on the Pacific Rim. If you don't do this, people will remember back in 2008, had a good idea, and they decided to take the city forward. We don't need delay on this thing. This is as well written as it can be. Let's go ahead, let's vote it up tonight, let's make a statement. Or are we going to say, no, we would rather fight about prerogatives of service areas, we would rather fight about, well, let's make sure that we protect this sum of money and that sum of money, and let's see Anchorage just driven by every other city in the lower 48. It's your choice, ladies and gentlemen. Not my choice. I'm leaving the assembly in 2 weeks. It's your choice. You can stand up tonight for the future, or you can say, no, we're going to stick with the past. It's your choice, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Teshi, then on the motion that's in front of us, which is to continue until May 6th, you are saying you do not support the motion.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Is there really anything more to be said? Ms. Selcraig, I think there must be.
I just wanted to make the comment that if this isn't supported tonight, it does not preclude us from rescoping something in the future.
Exactly.
So I'm going to assume that it's going to be a win no matter what we vote, because there's an opportunity here that's worth pursuing with time if it isn't approved tonight. I'm going to hope that we could extend it, but if that doesn't happen, I'm committed to working on it.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee.
Call the House, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's get everyone present. Mr. Sullivan, if you could, Mary, could you, or someone who's free? He's coming? Here he comes. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. There's no one else in the queue. Here's my take. I'm going to vote no on the continuance motion because there's an election in 2 weeks, and we've had a lot of debate and deliberation on this. And what I would like to see is, I would hate to continue this over after it's been an hour of discussion on the pros and cons, and then have to bring, I don't know, 2, 3, 1, 4, whatever it may be, new people back into it to discuss it. I appreciate Ms. Selcraig's comment that if this one doesn't go, we've got a chance to do it and do it again. And it might be better, I don't know. But I don't want to continue. I agree with Mr. Teshi. We either vote it up or we vote it down, and I don't see anybody else in the queue. So, on the motion to postpone till May 6th, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Teshi.
No.
Mr. Trainee. Mr. Sullivan.
No.
Mr. Starr.
No.
Mr. Coffey.
No.
Ms. Osiander. Ms. Johnston. No. Mr. Birch.
No.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Dr. Selcraig.
Yes.
Mr. Klayman.
Yes. What's the count, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, that fails 3-8.
Okay. Now, on the main motion, is there anything further that needs to be said? We did a lot of deliberation on the main motion in the context of a motion to postpone, but I will recognize anyone who wants. Don't call the question. Let's wait a minute. See if there anybody wants to testify. Not testify, comment further. I have no one in the queue. Thank you. We didn't have to call the question. Madam Clerk, call the roll. On the main motion to approve this matter.
Mr. Klayman.
Yes.
Dr. Selcraig.
Yes.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Mr. Birch. No. Ms. Johnston. Ms. Osiander. Mr. Coffey.
No.
Mr. Starr.
No.
Mr. Sullivan.
No.
Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
Mr. Teshi. Mr. Teshi. Mr. Chairman, that fails 4-7.
We're now on to special orders. Motion to remand AO 2006-104, AO 2006-104F. Sorry, thank you. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, I note that Walmart has withdrawn its petition. I recommend then, if we want to deliberate it, that we vote this down. If any rezone takes the consent of the applicant. Mr. Trainee.
Since I'm the one that brought this back to the body, there's no need to do it any longer. They're going to construct their building on the approved lot they have. So,
under the approved industrial zoning.
I'm withdrawing my motion.
All right. Is there any objection to the withdrawal of the motion?
No, but can I speak just for a second?
Yes, certainly.
privilege as well, and just from my Walmart experience, if you can go with that, I've seen two Walmart experiences in my community. We first had to address, as a community, I was community council president of the area when it occurred, which was to first sponsor a Walmart store, and we got through it, contentious as it might be. Then they came back and said they want to supersize the store, and now again tonight you weighed in on liquor. You know, they've been pretty good folks. They've downsized their lighting, they've moved their loading docks, they've fronted their store with appropriate colors and rock and lumber and wood and all of that. And so, you know, throughout all of that, you know, the hoping, the disparaging point is that the kids that have jobs and the community in the pricing and all that structure, not to even mention union or non-union, that whole isn't that. But I would embrace anybody that wants to contribute to our community and come and build entities of their size and scope and contribute back to the community. Probably $75,000 to $80,000 goes into my Eagle River and Chugiak sports teams from that store alone. So, not to pontificate, but you know, I hope it isn't a reflection that that our community doesn't embrace developers that come into our community. So, I appreciate the withdrawal, but I also want to make sure the message is sent that good development works, and we have some in our community. So, thank you.
Ms. Selcraig.
This is in my district, and I know that Walmart is now working with the municipality, and there's been some concern about what they'll do. And I really feel confident that they're working with the municipality. I have no reason to believe at this point that they aren't going to do the very best that they can do on that site, and I'm looking forward to them being good neighbors and being good citizens. And I think that that's how this system works. They're following the rules, and we have good laws in place to protect our interests, and it looks like to me like they're going to make a commitment to follow them. So.
I'm going to ask the body for this. Since this matter is now away from us, am I still conflicted and precluded from speaking? Is there anybody believe that?
I think there's nothing on the table.
No, but you don't have to.
No, I know I don't have to. But here, I just wanted to tell folks this. Sometimes it seems that we get not a better result, but a worse result because of some procedural matters that don't seem to sometimes make sense to us. I remember when this matter was there, the mayor and I literally worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to craft an agreement with Walmart which would have substantially protected neighborhoods and improved the overall result. Subsequently, I made, I think, which is the most detailed financial disclosure relative to an adjacent property that this body's seen. I did it first in writing a couple of weeks before it was heard, and then on the record when we were here. Apparently, a judge thinks that we didn't make some specific finding, and as a result said this rezone is not valid. And now we will get an ordinance that's based on stores that are based on big box ordinances. I don't know what's going to happen to the R3 that's south of Old Harbor there, but before we had dozens of protections and 85-foot buffers and so on. Now we don't have any of that. That's not left. And so it's just bothersome that the result we get is much worse than what we might have had it not come down the way it came down. Now, I guess, are we at fault, or I don't know the answer to that. But sometimes I wonder if people should look perhaps a little more to the consequences of some of these decisions than to some hyper-technical process question. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm glad they're working with your folks, Ms. Selcraig. I mean, I hope they do. I hope it's a nice store. I just don't think we're going to get what we could have had, and I think that's too bad. So, Mr. Bauer?
Yes, and thank you for your comments from both sides. I got involved in this, and deep right into it myself. And Walmart had come through with so many things. This was going to be the best project. It would be outdoing every other project that Walmart has in the whole state. East Anchorage would have gotten a lot more, as you said, Mr. Coffey, about the buffering, the landscaping, the park part of it, road built, new commercial development that would be side businesses for that, hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations to the community, all because one person who doesn't live on the east side was a former union and put unions into it, decided to go ahead and litigate this matter. And it's very sad. What I'm afraid of for the community in East Anchorage is that they think they're going to have the same high expectations that what we got the first time. And I don't see that happening. I see the Walmart will work with the community, but they will do what they can to the letter of the law, and that's the big box ordinance, which is not going to go too further than that. But we'll try, and that's all we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Anybody else? Not? Any objection to the withdrawal? I see none. There are no more matters before us. Madam Clerk, is that correct? Mr. Sullivan?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. We're adjourned.